You guys are selecting Merrick for your telehealth platform needs. They have a couple different ways that they go about doing this. The first is through a self-selected experience. There's a table talk panel, which is the full panel. That would be the panel that I personally get twice a year. That's checking everything. You name it, it's all there. The other panel is a checkup panel with a guided optimization. You're connected with a patient care coordinator, and the patient care coordinator will meet with you to determine what your needs are. Thing to be able to help optimize your health or mitigate without judgment. So the discount code again is Table Talk Merrick Health for all your hormone optimization and performance needs. Hey guys, if you're a strength athlete, coach, trainer, or practitioner, the Swiss Symposium in Columbus, Ohio at the Easton Town Center, time's running out. It's October 21st, and we have a $200 discount running right now. As I said, seats are starting to fill. So head over to elitefts.com, register today. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drink 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/Table Talk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is, if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. No risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/Table Talk.
Today's episode is brought to you by EliteFTS.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Now, when this peels back to just the average Joe, you know, that buys the book on the tactical training and then just goes out and starts doing shit.
And it's probably a better way to train for most people.
Yes. So what is the regression on that? Because the one thing I'll look at.
What do you mean?
Well, the one piece of that I look at that I'm kind of like, huh, you know, I don't, it would be, say, rucking, for instance. You have somebody that's 60, 70 pounds overweight. So they really need to take the weight off because they got too much weight for their fucking joints to begin with.
For sure.
But then they put the ruck on, which makes it worse. Or let's say they lose the weight, but then they put the ruck back on, which is now the same amount of weight on the joints.
But they'll only be doing it for an hour at a time.
Yeah.
I would also say that, like, if you can't walk briskly for an hour straight, you got no business rucking.
Okay.
So that's the guideline I use is like, if you can't do an hour straight, I'm talking not like, you know, crazy jog, but it needs to be a fat, not like relaxed, like an exercise pace power walk. You shouldn't be rucking. So like, but if you're in the military, you may not have a choice because, I know there's like standards for your weight and all that stuff, but sometimes those lines get a little blurry and people that are maybe heavier than they should be are still in. So they might have to be able to do something like that. But yeah, I think you definitely, with that, that wouldn't be to that point. So like, for example, like the way I would talk about getting to like even sprinting or something, like that's one thing I think it's important to try to get into. Like if you're going to be doing sprinting, is I'm becoming more around the school, even though I'm phasic, of getting in top speed once a week. I think that since I've been doing that more, you know, it's really kept people injury free, because I think that's like one of the most dangerous things people can do, especially strong people, because they're real powerful, is sprinting. So it's going to like when I first got into sprinting, I took a long time. I went about 2 years of tempo running, and I just kept pushing the pace up. I'd time it and like just keep going a little faster, a little faster. Then the first time I ever did any real sprints, they were for 6 yards, and then I started to build out from there. And really now I don't go beyond 20 yards just because I feel like, and I keep it up hills mostly because that resistance keeps it safer. Like it's your stride's not as long, your turnover's not as fast, and it's forcing you to drive your knee up anyways. But if I go on flat ground, it feels cool and powerful, but like it's just more dangerous, and like, you know what I mean? So like that's how I'd break somebody into that would be like, for example, if someone like want to get into sprinting, have to start doing like some tempo runs, like, so, you know, striders you call them, but like, you know, a very, very, very slow pace. And then also getting like, I keep more movement people's training. So like, for example, like it's going to be easier transition for you if in your off season, quote unquote, your powerlifting, say, it's easier transition if you're already doing farmer's walk. If you're already moving with some sort of resistance, to move without it, like say up a hill or something, is a much easier transition of like, I think that's what people get hurt is they do like, you know, the thing about the big three, if like your life is in this box of the big three, or even like bodybuilding, if that's all you do is just regular traditional gym movements, walk outside and slip on a banana peel, if you don't ever move, that you could be out for a while, where somebody else might just laugh it off because they're kind of ready for being in position. So I think by keeping some movement, even if you're not like a powerlifter, by keeping some movement in there, all you care about your total, you're still gonna have, you know, less of a chance of getting injured.
So what would be that bare movement?
It could be like a farmer's walk, sled drags, things like that. It's not like hauling ass, but like a backwards sled drag, say, and things like that. So it's going to make a transition into actually moving without the weight better than if you were just standing still powerlifting.
All right. So I'm gonna repeat what you just said, because I know there's a bunch of idiots that are lifters that would just go start sprinting.
Please
right?
don't. I'll tell you, it took me 2 years to start sprinting again. 2 years to start sprinting again, because like,
and that was with a base though of sled work and stuff too before that.
Exactly, because I remember Branch Warren asked me one time, because here's what happened is, I'll give you an example. So like going back to the strong people type of thing, I was doing a lot of explosive work. So I'd be someone okay to do some movement, because it wasn't like just, and so my brother was NCAA champion in shot put. So it was his wedding, and we were like two, or I guess right after he won it, like the year later or whatever, he's doing like open. And so we were in a race on like a 30 or 40 yard the day before the wedding. And I couldn't believe it. I got out ahead of him. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And I went down, and it was some kind of like something going on intercostal muscle or something. And it was like the worst thing ever. And I learned my lesson right there. It wasn't like this needs to be repeated twice. For like a couple of weeks, kind of just slowly went away. But like, I know that you have to acclimate your tissue. And once you get that there, I like to keep it in there, because then you don't have to go through this long process, because I don't want people getting hurt. Because like, and it's not for everybody. Like sometimes I've had people do like a tempo run, say, you know, going like 100 yards in like 20 seconds or something really slow. I'm like, you know, hey, like honestly, if this is making your hamstrings, like you tweaked a hamstring doing this, you know, you're basically running a sprint at like a, you know, 7-minute mile pace. This ain't sprint. So I don't know what kind of benefit you're getting out of it, because like if you're already getting hurt here, so we're better off like doing some other type of conditioning that's going to be more beneficial to you, kind of thing, and then get them into other things.
So start with a sled and then slowly work into slow tempo.
Yep. And then if so, you could also then from slow tempo, once you get into there, you want to get into short and resisted too. So like you could even be doing like say like 6-10 yards with a sled when you get ready to go to full speed, or up a hill. The flat ground, if you're not like training for a sport, I don't think you really need to be doing it. I really don't think you do, because like a lot of you guys are really powerful, and you're really a lot faster than you think you are, and it's just your tissue's not ready for it. And I don't see the benefit. I feel like that when you go up a hill or have resistance, it's so much safer that it's not worth the slightly extra benefit of going flat. I mean, you say, well, what if it screws up your stride? I don't really care. I'm not doing a track meet, so my stride might be slightly screwed up.
Well, I don't think they give a shit either. I think the question they would have would be, is this something that they should look into integrating now? Anyhow.
Depends what your goals are. So I think for powerlifting, if you have this kind of athletic base, you're younger, you've trained this way, we could definitely get something out of it. But I think for the most part, you're just doing it because you want to do it. Like, it's not necessary to have a higher total. There's other things we can do. So to get your explosive stuff going and activate your CNS and all that stuff, we'd be better off doing either box jumps. And again, you don't have to be really high, just enough, just jump, you want to maximize your power, just get above the box, don't try to or if you miss it by a half inch, you're falling on your head kind of thing. Or medicine ball throws.
How do you program the box jumps?
I just like it before. So I got one of two ways for powerlifting stuff. I like them either before the squats or deadlifts or whatever you're going to do, and to kind of activate you. Or a lot of times what I'll do is so say you're doing it like from doing before deadlifts, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put light squats in there to warm up. So say we're doing 6 singles with about 50% of your maximal safety bar, just to kind of activate you. Do one of those, take a little rest, then just jump up on a box right after. Kind of potentiate your nervous system that way.
How do you program it over time?
I might take it out during a hypertrophy phase and stuff, but I think the box jumps are low enough impact where you can again throw those in more often. I think you can get a lot out of a little. I don't think you need, I don't know what the NSCA says. What they say, the top end of jump volume is 160 or something. I mean, it's something really high, which I've experimented this stuff, and I can get a lot out of a little. I think most people can, especially if they've been doing it. So let's just say you did need that much because you're at the highest end. Most of the people starting to integrate this in to help their strength aren't at the highest end of box jumping. So if they do anywhere from 6 to 10 jumps, they can do that for a long time and get benefit from it, where they don't really need to cycle it or anything. It's almost like a glorified dynamic warm-up in a sense, is what it can be, because it's not that impactful. You're landing on a box. You're not doing a depth jump.
I've used it a couple different ways. I've used it to where, I'll test them. What's their max? That way I know 100%. So then I got a 70, 80, 60.
Yeah.
And then you got to be very diligent about, if it says 60% for 5 jumps, don't over jump the box. Right.
How do you do that?
How do I do that?
Yeah.
Don't use as much force.
Yeah.
So it just kind of goes there. That way it kind of scales up. Now, if it makes a difference or doesn't make a difference, I don't fucking know. That I don't think has been effective when I would put that in.
Yeah.
Just to put that out there. Where I like to put it in is if, say I have them using speed squats or dynamic squats or squats just with almost all compensatory acceleration. And I move them into more of a strength block to where the weight's heavier and that intent's still there, but the bar moves slower. I've had some lifters that can maintain that pop that we're talking about. Yeah. Some can maintain it longer than others.
Yeah.
Right. So the ones that can't maintain it very long is say there's 2 blocks of 4, 2 blocks of 3.
Yeah.
I can throw a box jump in there every couple weeks to keep that from falling off.
Okay.
Right. So that's just enough. And it doesn't take a lot. 4 jumps, 5 jumps.
That's what I'm saying. You can get a ton out of it.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot. That I had more success with than any other.
I don't understand why people, because I think people because technically if you go by the actual definition of plyometrics, that wouldn't even be plyometric, but I don't know, there's a difference between doing Jesse Kellum used to do depth jumps up 5 or 6 feet. That's obviously going to put a lot of impact on you.
You just made a good point. I have them step down. So they jump up and then there's a series of blocks that they can walk down.
Well, I remember, I think it was Jim Winder one time said something on here a long time ago, was saying something along the line of everybody says you need to be able to squat 2 times your body would do plyometric. He's like, my kid jumps off a tree all the time and he's fine, and it's sometimes it does need to come back to that sort of that common sense level of regardless of what anybody says, if you jump, say 2 inches in the air and land, is that a problem? Well, you're just right above the box and land on it.
Yeah.
So I think you don't have to do it year round or anything, but I think you can do it longer than like, that's another thing I used to put in there, like, only like don't do it more than like 4 weeks at a time or 8 weeks at a time. And I think you can get away with it a lot longer.
What would be your equivalent for the upper body?
Those are a little more impactful would be like a plyometric push-up probably.
Yeah.
Would be, or compensatory acceleration kind of bench press. One of the best activations I've had though for upper body, and this is pretty dang stressful on your CNS, is isometrics against the power rack. Same with on deadlift. So you get under the power rack, and so say you have a sticking point. You're gonna work on like 2 inches from lockout. You push as hard as you can against the rack for 6 seconds. You try to break the rack, take a break, and then you do like a compensatory acceleration set of bench press right after. And the reason I did that is because I remember one of the old Russian books was talking about how a lot of times when you do isometrics for too long, that's part of the problem. It can basically mess up the motor pattern. So I figured that's the way you get the transference, by like kind of doing a contrast set that way. And I've had huge success with myself, but then mainly with other people, of just like, of being able to get like those sticking points of like, what's the old thing of like isometrics are, they're the old thing is that what 15 to 20 degrees is the transference.
Yeah.
Okay. That's for like overall development of whatever. That's probably not the best thing, but if have a sticking point that you need to attack, that's exactly what you need then, because that's a defining a sticking point then.
Where do you go if it is within those 50 to 20 degrees? Because if I have somebody do that, I'm going at their strongest point. So it's usually a little bit higher in the range of motion, not lower, because there is a range. Let's say if it's a deadlift, it might be 3 different pins you get to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
One of them could kind of like be hell. The other one they're stronger at. Actually, let me reframe that. I go with the one they can maintain the best technical position in, right? Sometimes the lower one, they have a harder time with that. I've had other people say they go exactly where the sticking point is, which is kind of weird to me, because how do you know what that exactly is?
Right.
Then I'll have other ones that say they go with the hardest. I don't know how much.
I'd probably go slightly lower than it, because it might be manifesting late.
Yes.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I'd err to the side of going lower. I also would do like another one I've done. If someone needs to get strong really quick and they've been strong before, doing multiple point isometrics is like doing like a 3-point isometric, like a bench press, bottom about 2 inches off the chest, mid range, 2 inches from lockout. Do 1 to 2 sets at each point. And if it's not like there's a sticking point, it's just like we need to develop, because you can produce about 20% more force there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can concentrically, and you can do it for much longer, obviously. So that's a good way to kind of teach your nervous system to fire again if you hadn't been doing it lately. So if you hadn't been going heavy lately, that's a great way to bring your strength back.
So if you were to contrast that, would you contrast each position with that full rep, or would you do all 3 then?
No, each position with a full rep.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'd definitely do it each time. I would want to make sure we're getting transference, because let's just say, you could put 800 pounds of force there and you all of a sudden get 1,000 or something. If it didn't transfer, it wouldn't matter. So you want to make sure you're getting that transference.
No, I'm 100% on the same page with that transference to the full rep.
Yeah.
It's why I have 2 ISO racks back there. Remember the old school isometric racks?
Mm-hmm.
That way you can hit it right there, then just step right here and the other bar is already set up, especially for the deadlift. Because the deadlift gets really funky. You got to like strip the pins and shit. And if it's a long rack, the pins are this long.
Absolutely.
So I did find the faster you can get from one to the other, the better. Like if you wait 30 seconds or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was the fatigue set in from the isometric. I don't know what the fuck it was, but from one to the other, it's like that. Okay. It looks great. If there's too much time in there, it's like, it's probably mental. If I'm really to break it down, what's going on is they're in a mindset to be able to do work. Then they can do that and then go right back to work. If it's too long,
and also like they can be pretty tough on some of the higher level lifters, because you get so much activation with them. They can be so fatiguing. They really can wipe them out pretty good if they're not careful. So
yeah, it was when I used to do shit like that, it was the hardest thing I had to recover from.
Yeah.
It was terrible. So that 135 would be like whatever, maybe 225 would be the lift I'm doing after that. Because it was just fucking hell.
Yeah, I go a little higher than that, more like 50, 60%, but just really, I would take a longer break too. I'd go more like 2 to 3 minutes because I go like 6 seconds, but longer if I needed it. Like I was never a thing of like the training effect I wanted was the strength, not any kind of fatigue. So
Yeah.
I would take as long as I need to take, but it usually be like 2 or 3 minutes.
Haven't done that, so I can see that.
Yeah, probably closer to 3.
Yeah, that can make, and then you're fully recovered, but
Fully
you still
recovered.
have that transference.
Yeah.
Now from the explosive strength, before people always forget this. I had 15 years of competing before Westside. I used to train in a gym that had a boxing ring and
Okay.
boxing bags. I used to use heavy bags, for the plyometric
Right.
throws, to kind of simulate the bench press.
Mhm.
That I thought helped,
Wow. Yeah, that's
because
good.
there's a little bit of eccentric, a little bit, if you catch it right, which isn't often, but if you catch it right, you get a little bit of eccentric overload, but not much, but enough to be able to get, that stretch reflex
For sure.
for that. And that for me seemed to create more speed on the bench than med ball rebounders. Was the angle.
Yeah, those in theory would be good, but I haven't had as good luck with them either.
No, you catch them all fucked up. So it's something.
Have you done any with Smith machine throws ever?
No.
I used to do that with Al Davis a lot because the Metroflex is weird because the Smith machine was kind of jacked up, so it worked out perfectly. You throw it up really hard, but whatever reason the eccentric was so much slower than a barbell, so it wasn't like catching a live barbell.
Okay.
It was like kind of catch.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was designed that way or if it's just because it was old, but it worked perfectly for what we were doing.
How much weight was he fucking? Because he's a freak.
Oh, we were going light, like 115 pounds kind of thing,
Okay.
and just really going as high as you can. There was a spot we could put the catcher on
Yeah.
and try to get him to hit it. And it would be like a challenge for him and do like, 5 or 6 singles before he benched. And it would kind of get him, ready to go.
And going back to all those guys and all that time that you were in there experimenting with all them, what were some of the things that you did that didn't work?
I think one of the things, I think one of the main things I did that, like I was doing that sort of talking about the eccentric overloads is we were trying to do that on the Smith machine bench where I'd put like, try to get like an overload with like a 25 or 45 on there, have the person lower it and lift it back up. And I think even though it just never seemed to work out, how it should work out.
Yeah.
I think initially not accepting the fact that certain people just can't deadlift every week, like kind of like irritate me. I mean, it's like 25 years old kind of thing. And, that kind of thing. I think that was a mistake. I think that, that was probably one of the biggest mistakes. And then, yeah, I'd say probably those two things were probably two of the bigger mistakes.
Any things that you set up that you just knew was not a good idea from this jump?
What's that?
Anything that you set up that you just knew was not a good idea from the start?
I'd say another one is I think too many heavy tire flips. I've seen since then I've seen enough people like jack up biceps on it. And I think I had a lot of people doing like really heavy tire flips, and it worked out really well. No one ever got hurt, but I would definitely, I love that movement too. But I've seen too many biceps go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a major mistake. I mean, it just wasn't probably the safest way to do it, to put it that way. Trying to think what else that. I mean, honestly, probably just safety stuff. I mean, a lot of times we'd be training like right there in the road, right there, and like there'd be cars coming through and so that's not necessarily a training mistake. That's more just, being an idiot kind of thing. Just using that roadway for just kind of like hogging it. Just we're gonna set up right here.
Yeah. When I was going through your books that you have on Amazon last night, there were a couple that I didn't know that you had. One of them was on children, and I assume that's training kids, right?
No, it's more goal setting for kids.
So goal setting for kids. So where's this? Is it coming from working with your own kids or just in general?
Mainly working with my own kids because it's more for little kids.
Yes.
Up to like 10 or I'd say up to 10 or 11 years old. So basically with my kids, I kind of started on the successful mindset kind of stuff really early, and I think it's really paid off just by the way they talk and stuff, and what the actions are they said. And that book's more on actually just like the mindset of like how to achieve a goal.
Okay. And it's for the kids, or it's for the parents to implement with the kids?
I would say it's more for the kids.
Okay.
It'd be good for the kids to read with the parents, but it's not like necessarily. I don't think an adult's going to read it like you'd read a regular book, and it's more to like teach the kids how to do it. It's like more of a children's book, like
Yes.
illustrations and things.
And then how do you work through that? I mean, you got a young kid, you're trying to teach goal setting, right? They're a young kid.
Yeah, no, totally. I think with teaching kids goal setting, it's not a lot different than teaching adults. I mean, it's actually gonna be easier because you got a fresh sponge of a mind of like teaching them to like value the process and things like that. Like, hey, what's your goal? It's not necessarily get like 2 touchdowns. It's to like not to miss practice, not to do like this. So like teach them to value the process, and then how to, the right self-talk. I think you're off to the races, and you can implement whatever you need to implement. I mean, if somebody would have like taught most people that, they'd be a lot better off now, because it's not that hard to teach a kid, because they're more of a blank slate. Children, I think it was the Jesuit priest that used to say, give me a child till 7, I'll show you the man. Because basically they're saying, if I got a child till 7, I'll show you how that kid's going to turn out, because kids are so impressionable. So if you can work on this stuff before that, I think you're going to have a much easier time.
Oh, way easier time, because one of the biggest issues I see with a lot of adults is they can set a goal, but they can't set an objective one. Right. So there's no way to track if you're moving towards, I want to be stronger.
Yeah.
Like, the fuck does that mean? Right. Then they can't really nail it down.
For sure.
Right.
So there's definitely like, yeah, you want to set smart goals for sure, and be specific and measurable and attainable. Like that's the other thing with goals. You have some people that want to like we go to meet this weekend. Okay, finally the meet's here. Kind of a good prep and all this, and we're already showing the goals. Well, I actually felt the 525 deadlift felt pretty good. I think my goal is 700. It's like in the future for sure, but not right this second. Or other people sell themselves short. So I think it has to be attainable. On a timetable too. Like, because that's the other one is I want to get lean. Well, by when? What's lean and by when? But I think a lot of people are going wrong with the goal setting. They're not doing process goals. They're actually making goals of like, instead of saying I want to drop 10 pounds, say there's self-talk right there. Instead of saying lose, drop.
Yeah.
No one wants to be a loser. So I want to drop 10 pounds. Maybe you should say to yourself, I'm committing to eating no more than 2,200 calories a day, or whatever it is, because those things are totally measurable, and they're totally in your control. Like if you set a goal to get first at the powerlifting meet, say you total 2,400, you've never even totaled 2,200. But what if someone shows up and totals 2,800? Then what? Did you fail? No, I don't think you did. But you got to make the goals about the process. And I think once you start valuing the process, the product's better, and your mindset and your achievement, everything's better.
How do you train now?
Me? So I train more like a tactical athlete for sure.
So then what objectives and goals do you have to be able to measure the metric? Or what metrics are you using to measure the progress?
For sure. So right now I'm doing more of like, I'll tell you, like I'm doing more of like, I switched my split up to basically doing like doing more like 3 full body days a week, which I haven't done in a while. And then 2 days of aerobic conditioning and 1 day of sprinting. The aerobic conditioning being rucking. So I can set goals on like, rucking times is one way. And then I'll set goals on like some of the strongman implements and stuff. So I don't like setting goals on like powerlifting stuff that I've already done, because I know I can't lift as much. I'm not a lot weaker, but I can't lift what I did. And I could, I think, but I'd have to I don't want to do it, because then I have to give up everything else. And it's not worth it to me. I don't want to do that anymore. It was great. It was great while it happened, but now it's a new season of life. So I'll set goals on like just various, strongman stuff. So I'm going to sit my wheelbarrow for X amount, like for this distance, that kind of stuff. So instead of doing it more traditional lifts, I'll do it on more like strongman based stuff, or like, and more endurance type of goals, and that kind of thing.
Are they stretch goals? I mean, are they goals that you're putting that you have to work towards? Say it's going to take 9 or 12 months, or are they more short term?
I do more short term. I'm going like 12 weeks or less every time for sure.
Okay.
Because I was before doing, more of like a more upper and lower body days too. So I've been experimenting with this and it feels really good because the main thing I want to do is like, I like to push the rucking. I like to push the hill sprints. So, but I don't want to lose the strongman stuff, but I'm okay. Lately, it's been really good. The training has actually been great. And, on the strongman stuff. So I do keep pushing that, but I don't like, I'll set a goal, but I wouldn't call it a stretch goal in the sense of like, it's an attainable goal. So like, let's just say, I was going to do chain yoke, 700 pounds for a certain amount of distance on a chain yoke. I could probably do more, but I want to just kind of beat what I did before instead of push it to like 750 and be at a real stopping point next time I come around. Because I'm happy where I'm at, but I still think I make slight improvements.
We have a Discord group for the table talk. It kind of supports all that. And one of the questions that they had out there wasn't a question that I really expected, but it's kudos to you because it's one of your clients. And so he was giving you props on the fact that no matter what, you're always getting back with them within 24 hours.
Right.
Which the question was, what is your time management skills? How do you lay that out to be able to do that?
I'll tell you, it's more a mentality of like, I feel like I have a really good life. I have everything I've set out to do, I've done. And I'm doing new cool stuff all the time. I don't want to give that up. I love what I'm doing. So I know there's no other chance. So like, I'm sure you're the same way. I don't get days off, right? I don't get days off. But I mean, obviously it's like, it's cyclical. Like some days could be like much easier like than other days. Like some days are really hard and some days, you might have to do an hour or something, but like you're still doing something. So I think it's a motivation to do what I'm doing, like, and just keep serving people, be able to support my family and stuff like that. So that's the main time management skill is I know what I have and I love what I do. And even if sometimes it's kind of a pain in the ass, it's so much better than the alternative. I can't even like dream of doing anything else. So there's no other way. It's not even, I don't call it time. To me, time management is more like a lot of times stuff you don't want to do. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't even view this as that.
It's kind of like a paranoia thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to have to do anything else. This is what I want to do.
I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to, go back to the working school strength coach is cool, but like, it's like, getting it, an email about you're allowed to wear jeans on Friday or something. I just want to dress like this. I want to be left alone.
Yeah. Are there any books that you're working on now?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a new one. It's called, Dom and I do it together. It's called Strength Heroes. It's about a lot of the historical kind of strength heroes, but more like like the Doug Young era and those kind of people versus like there is some of the way older ones too, but like JC Heiss or whatever, but like just a profile on them and what we could find in their routines, and then like how the lesson kind of relates, because there's a common theme of like a goal to get stronger, kind of find a mentor, that sort of thing, and then go on your way. Because like a lot of these, like we say, like we're trying to write this as truthfully as possible, but obviously this isn't like, I mean, even like major history, we don't really always know what happened here.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out the best we can, but like here's some of the commonalities, and like basically like use it for the best way to serve you, kind of thing.
I want to go back to the bodybuilding because we spent a lot of time on the strength and conditioning, pretty much just because it was pretty much where our primary focus is with that. But you've worked with bodybuilders and a lot in the bodybuilding sector, and there is probably a large number of people that are watching this, so they're going to hear this, that's what their aim is. For sure. Is that hypertrophy.
I love bodybuilding.
And to look better and all the other kind of stuff. Where what have you learned about that process since you've been around it this whole time, right? Because some things are the same, some things have changed. And what, just from the training side, right? The nutrition side can be a whole different discussion, but from the training side, where do you think
for sure
people are spending
this is a great one. So
overanalyzing?
this is the time about mistakes I made. I think this is one I got right.
Yeah.
Like I could do it better within the confines, but alternating phases. Like I've always been a believer in that because the guy I used to work with, Ben Graves, he doesn't do any of this anymore, but he was benching like 600 in Kentucky back like over in Nashville. And I just remember how shredded he got doing, when he got into bodybuilding, just doing like one show. And it was amazing how dense that muscle was and stuff. So I've always been a big believer in going back and forth. Like I think a lot of people are going too much strength based or too much bodybuilding based. So I think, like anything else, we talk about the tactical and athlete strength standards. We want to hit those. But so like once you get to that level, you're going to probably aim more to like more movement type of stuff. But if you're like really good at movement and weak, you aim more to that type of stuff. So with bodybuilding, the better you get, the less need and less often there's going to be for a pure strength phase. But at some point, I think it's going to benefit you to do more strength based work.
Now, when you're talking pure strength phase, what rep ranges are you speaking in? Are you speaking in a 1 to 3 peak phase or staying out of that?
Okay, so if it's like there's literally no powerlifting goal, you would go a little bit higher, more 3 to 5, 3 to 6 or something.
Yeah.
Now, most of them that do this, I'm going to talk them into competing. If they're like, because like, unless it's if someone comes to me about bodybuilding, I'm going to be the last person to say, hey, dude, you got to do a powerlifting.
Yeah.
But usually, like when it's like a bigger bodybuilder, like they're going to come to me in the sense of like they want to, oh, hey, I actually want to do a meet or I want to go for this goal. Like it's not just like, I mean, I think people get bit by the strength bug and it's like no longer become just like, this isn't just to serve my bodybuilding. This is actually like fun.
Well, that's a longer process then because you got to get them acclimated and their tendons acclimated to be able to support those loads over 90%.
But a lot of them will do that on their own. So they've done it on their own in the sense of like they're not doing it like periodized, but oh, dude, deadlift feels good. I'm gonna throw another plate on, do a single. Okay, so like a lot of bodybuilders are actually getting more of the high end work than you like the ones I deal with at least. They will take heavy singles, but they're doing sets of 15 and a bunch of junk volume.
Yeah.
Or they're doing like heavy singles. They're not getting this like kind of like, more strength based work in the middle ground of like volume in the sense of we think for strength training. So I think a lot of people spend, I think obviously bodybuilding, the objective is bodybuilding. I do think strength is your base. And I think there's a lot of like, I actually had a couple thing on here of like bodybuilding is you think about like, besides your body is like if you think about the benefits, it's like I think Christian Thibodeau was actually talking about a little bit on here. I don't know if he used the term, but it was myogenic tone. You have that kind of look. Like he said, what did he say? He said a ripped sprinter looks different than a ripped bodybuilder. It's just, he said to talk about your back. When you do that pull up, your back just looks different. So I think there's definitely that kind of like different, like just it's a different look. Like your nervous system's in a partial state of activation all the time, and it just looks slightly different. So by being stronger, you can obviously accumulate more volume or your workload, as you call it, because once you factor stress times reps, you do the times weight.
That's workload.
You're going to work a lot more workload in there, right? Like, so I think that's, and then I think the, your fast twitch muscles are more superficial to your skin too. So that may be why you have like the more dense type of stuff. And I mean, the simplistic example is if you can squat 900, which a bodybuilder do, but you're probably do more on a leg extension than somebody squats 200 kind of thing. So there's that aspect to it too. So I think bodybuilders do benefit from having a strength base. And I think they all did, before it got like just heavy into drugs.
Yeah. When you were talking about the workload thing, I think that can potentially be a missing component with all these conversations that are going around about the effective reps that are closest to failure. Like yes, they may be the reps that matter the most. They may be the reps that create the most growth, but all these other reps, even if it's junk volume, are creating workload.
We're creating something.
So there's got to be some kind of recovery and systemic development because of that workload.
Have to be.
Yes. I mean, if you reduce and take it completely away, is that fatigue going to look the same? I don't think so.
I wouldn't think so either.
There's one thing I've noticed over the years, just in, I don't know if I would call it density, but if you basically hug a bodybuilder, you grab a bodybuilder, and you grab a powerlifter, one is like hitting a fucking wall.
Yeah.
And the other one, while bigger, and definitely more muscular, isn't as hard. It's weird.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
that's what I'm saying. I think that's the look we're talking about.
Yes. It was also it's a feel. Like, and so it's one's like hypohydrated, maybe, just more glycogen in the cells could potentially be what it is, or the other one dehydrated. Fuck, I don't know. The one's hard. And the other interesting thing, being as fucking old as I am now, the thickness one retains, as they get older as a power lifter it's kind of interesting to see.
That's true.
I mean, fucking Ed Cohen. I mean, some of these guys, the thickness that they, even without even training that fucking much,
for sure,
it's like that lasts so much longer throughout age that you can't tell me that's bad from the aging process.
For sure,
because that strength and that bone, the muscle supporting the spine and all this other stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's basically kind of covering is I think also a lot of the good bodybuilders, I mean, a lot of the powerlifters are going to be part bodybuilder too, just because you have to hit those accessories and stuff at some point.
Well, you hope, right? We've seen a shift there too.
Well, I've never was really into West Side stuff as much, but I always thought that was like kind of attracted me to a lot of Louis' articles. Initial was the importance he placed on accessory work. Like, you're not going to bench press, 600 pounds if you got the back of someone does 250 kind of thing.
Well, you see a drop in that though with the higher frequency models.
Yeah.
That have come through. But I do think that's a little misleading too, because there is accessories in those models too.
I think with the better models.
Yes. If you look, they're there. Some of the other ones, they're not so much, but somewhere there's got to be the volume to be able to develop that hypertrophy.
There has to be.
Now with powerlifting over that, same question going back at you again, but now with powerlifting, because you've seen all the different, I don't want to say anything's really changed because the same basic models just kind of keep rotating over a period of time. But I do believe it all falls back into just pure design, basics training in some way or another. But it's cyclical. You've been around long enough to see, well, here comes this, here comes this. Which are the ones that when you see coming, kind of, you're probably old enough now, you don't give a fuck. But when you're younger, when you see coming, we're like, oh shit, we got to deal with this again.
Yeah. One of them was like I didn't like the deadlifting without deadlifting, like get your deadlift up without deadlifting. I think I was too extreme the other way of everybody's got to deadlift all the time. I found out that to be true, but I think at some point you're going to have to deadlift. I mean, it could be like, I'll have people that say they pull sumo really well, and it doesn't really sit well with their hips heavy. I mean, they're getting like one heavy deadlift a month sometime, and even in a peaking cycle, they're not going to be doing it that often. They might get a lighter day one week, a heavier another way, than some conventional work in there too. But I think at some point you're going to have to deadlift. And I think I didn't like that one. I'm trying to think what else. I'm not a fan of the even though I'm not opposed at all. Like we're talking about earlier, frequency being the biggest individual difference, but like the squat everyday stuff, because that was like what was it, 2015? Was that around before? I don't remember that one really being around.
I'm sure it was.
I'm sure too, but like, that kind of one of like where it's like, it's more of like, the problem with all these things is like they're catchy and people are trying to attach like a cultural lifestyle to it rather than what gets you effective results. And like this, so it becomes like a hashtag and all this crap of like, whatever. A trend.
Yeah. That's interesting because we've always seen trends, but now they're actual real trends.
Yeah, they are. So, trying to think what else has been around. I've never liked the ones that I haven't seen as much like lately is the no accessory stuff, or like, you cut out accessories like 12 weeks out from a meet or something. Like, I mean, at some point, what if something's limiting how much you can lift? You're gonna have to do something about it. I mean, I get that you're having to like be specific, but if something, if your triceps are holding you back, a set of Tate presses or something, it wouldn't necessarily be like the end of the world to add a few sets and it could help you. So like, I don't like the trends of like no accessory work either, just doing the competition lift, because hardly any sport I mean, in football or something, you don't just only like scrimmage at practice. I mean, you shouldn't at least you be doing some other stuff at some point, you know. It might be similar, but it's different. So I think that's the other one is like the trend I don't like is like just a no accessory work kind of stuff.
I was thinking that a lot of these reoccurring cyclical trends would disappear because of information so easily available. I mean, it is way more available than 30 years, 40 years ago.
For sure.
You know, so if something comes, it's like the news cycle should be faster, you know, so these should spin faster. And a lot of them are just bullshit to begin with. So if it comes up, it's not going to stick very long because too many other people are going to say this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Or just ignore it. And I think that's why a lot of these, like the accessory one that you're talking about, I could be hoping here, you know, I don't think it's going to come back around. I think a lot of the really stupid type of ones won't come back around because the education has come up to a certain degree that the average education's come up to a certain degree. You know,
it's tough to say because, you know, a lot of stuff like, I mean, I've never been a proponent of like the hit or anything, but like a lot of it is like in their defense, a lot of the stuff is a lot of people when they study it aren't pushing themselves. I mean, like when like a lot of these guys were talking about like these sets to failure, it's like, you know, concentric failure, isometric failure, eccentric failure, and all this. And like it's like somewhere you've never been before. The ones that are doing it right a lot of times versus like not like, oh, this is kind of uncomfortable, I'm going to stop this now kind of thing. So I think sometimes they do get a bad rap because the people that are being studied aren't willing to put in the necessary work. In that case, it's not so much a lifestyle thing as like, it's just the actual hard work right then and there.
Well, I think that's one of those things that essentially what we've seen happen so many times is you take a training method and then you create a program essentially around a training method, right? We've seen programs based upon rest pause.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen programs based upon circuits. We've seen programs based upon supersets and shit like that. So when I would see things like that, I'm like, oh, okay, that's just these are these 4 training methods that are created to train a muscle beyond failure or whatever you want to be able to call that. Intensification methods is what I would call that.
Okay.
You know, so this is based upon those things. Or you'd see another program that comes out and there's something that's very similar at the end of every single set that is basically a rest pause, but it's not a rest pause.
Mile reps,
cluster reps. You know, there's always another name for the same fucking thing. You just got to peel it back enough. Like, tell me what that is again. And then okay. So basically rest pause.
Yeah.
You know, you just peel it all back. That I think will always continue to keep coming around and around and around. Now I don't know what happens at the beginner level.
Yeah.
I don't pay attention. You know, I don't pay attention to that. You know, I don't even know where beginners would go, you know, to learn about who they follow. I don't know. You know, I probably should pay attention, but I fucking don't. You know,
I'm not sure who the niche would be on that. Yeah, the other one is so like example, another one I think sort of trendy is like the SBD days, like squat, bench, and deadlift, because when you have to put like hashtags and acronyms, it's like usually to try to like sell something on the, you know, try to sell something.
That's the one thing that I don't use word size, positioning. So we've seen that, you know, over the last 20 years as people position themselves differently. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Like if you position yourself under a certain method, then you're kind of fucked long term. Like if you want to stay around long term, you have to be able to, you know, pivot with the success of the people that you're trying to work with.
For sure.
You know, and you're at that point now. It's interesting. You can see it. Like you can see it as it's happening with other people and be like, okay, that won't be around 3 or 4 years. That won't be around 5 years. You can also see what's bullshit too. Like there's no way that person is making that much money doing that.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
That's very fucking apparent as well.
Yeah, it's crazy though. Of like, you know, I remember somebody told me like, probably like 2013 or something. Like, look who's on you see on the internet right now. Even like they're not going to be here in 5 years probably. And there's a lot of truth to that. Like, it's like all these people that were, a lot of them were like, you know, strangely enough, they seem to be selling roofs. I'll hit people on Facebook that want to buy a roof. And it was like, dude, you said you were passionate for the fitness industry and give up everything. And it's like, I think there's sort of like that too, of like, if any of this stuff is just like, how long can you walk the straight line and not get off path? I mean, because it's like, what are you focusing on? I think for me, the easier part's been just focusing on what I have, what I want, and what's going on. So if something does seem a little tedious at times, it sure beats the alternative.
That's the same as training, though.
For sure.
I mean, so it's kind of all learned there. It just comes through with that. With the books that you've had, which one has sold the best?
I'd say Jailhouse Strong.
Okay. Now there's, how many is there? 2 or 3 different Jailhouse Strongs.
Successful Mindset. Then there's the interval training one. So 3.
Okay, so 3 of those. So the original one,
yeah,
was that. And then what after that? What?
It might be probably quickly was Built to the Hilt.
Yes. Well, there's 2 of those, right?
Yep. And the Metroflex one did really well. And then I think the Strongman, the tactical Strongman is done really well.
That's fairly recent though, right?
Yeah. And then and then the tactical the keto one sold a lot. It hasn't been selling as much lately. I think that was kind of a trend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was more of like just different nutritional information that wouldn't be like you're trying to get ready for like a bodybuilder power for me necessarily. I think a really good one is that hasn't sold as well as the Saga, the Tijuana Barbell Club, because it's more of like a literary style. That one is really good, but that one unfortunately hasn't sold. It's weird because like that was more of a passion project than the keto one, but the keto one.
Yeah, you know how that works.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the cool thing about like the like Tactical Strongman or Jailhouse Strong or like Power Building or something, those are power passion projects too.
Mm-hmm.
And they've actually sold, and the rucking one sold really well. That's a real recent one too. That
Mm-hmm.
one sold really well. And I think that one kind of, part of it was also it hit at a good time because of COVID, and you could go, even when there's lockdowns, you can still go outside and go rucking.
Yeah.
So I think that was good.
Now, how the physical books sell versus the digital? Because I'm one of the dudes, I mean, you see them out there. I buy the physical shit.
I would say that the ebooks definitely sell more, or digital books. The difference being, I think the reason is like, I bet you the physical books get read more and taken care of more and have more notes in them, because the Kindle is actually nice to keep notes in.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is very efficient for that, and they're very easy to find. So it's not like the old days where you have to scroll through something.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like, with the ebooks, there could probably be more impulse buying, where like a physical book, like you really want it, you're gonna wait for it, and that kind of thing.
Well, the ebooks come out sooner now too, right?
Yeah. See, I've always wondered, is that by design? Just because I think they want people to buy the ebooks because there's no inventory to carry or printing to do.
Yeah. I mean, that would depend upon the margins of which the company's getting. So, I mean, we don't need to talk about that on air.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that they're probably getting a bigger margin of one than the other.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I'm saying. It's like sort of, if it's, when I say everything's going digital, it's not necessarily like the people are speaking and want that. I think it's kind of like, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah. I mean, if it's something I actually like, then I have both.
Yeah.
So I actually end up spending more,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I want it, to have the physical version, because that's how I've always done it. It's just taking notes and shit like that. But the digital version allows me to be able to transfer, I can read it anywhere.
Well, you got to be the first people to really sell ebooks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At least in the fit. I don't know. Were there other industries doing it when they first started here?
Not like we were. I mean, there were a couple, but when we were doing it, we had to figure out the whole fucking mechanism on how to set it up to email and download all that, where now there's plugins and shit to be able to do that, and how to store them, You know, there was all those type of things. And that was before it even became the issue of people stealing him. Well, I guess they probably were, but we just all didn't know.
Mhm.
You know, they put it on torrent sites and share them all over the place, which became a clusterfuck for a lot of you guys.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember Wendler figuring out one time that granted those people aren't going to buy anyhow, you know, so it's like 1 million copies or something like that were all downloaded for free on some of these other sites. And he's like losing his mind.
No, he's right. Cause I don't remember what the number was, but like it was one of like the Metroflex ones or something, or it wasn't it. And it was like over 100,000 or something.
That was ridiculous.
And it was like in a short period of time.
Yeah. I was spending a lot of my time back then sending out takedown requests and like cease and desist shit
Yeah.
to all these different sites that weren't going to do shit to get it pulled down. Or I could get it pulled down, but then somebody else would just put it right back up. Then I just got to the point where I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to start sticking a ton of ads in every book I put out. Right. That way, if there's going to be 1 million people seeing it, there's going to be 1 million people seeing the ads. And then maybe they buy other shit, you know, kind of go that route. And that would, but it was definitely before Amazon had Kindle and all the other stuff, because when that came in and before iBooks, you know, both of those things, because then when that came in, it became like, well, fuck now, like, how do you format for these things?
Yeah.
Like, fuck it, I'm out. You can't compete with Amazon. You know, it's like done there.
Yeah, because they knock your commission down if you do over $9.99.
Yes. Yeah.
Major.
Well, they actually, they put the price, they made the price have to be lower, right? That was the big thing.
You have to, or if you sold one at $18.99, you'd be getting less than if you did $9.99.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that's right. I remember that, right? Because that's what fucked that thing up. Because a lot of the ebooks back there was $24 or something like that, $29. So then all of a sudden it's like, what the fuck? You know, now that I remember that now we can sell it for $24, but they're going to sell it for $9. Who are they going to buy it from? You know, they're going to buy it from that. And then they had scale, you know, so for a lot of we didn't sell that much gross wise, you know, as far as a company, it wasn't like a huge revenue stream for us, but that fucked up a lot of other people that was their revenue stream.
Yeah.
Was that because that just crushed it.
No, for sure. That makes sense.
With
books, writing, I should say the other thing is writing books, I think is a really good way to get your continuing education. That's been the main thing for me. And then making some money from it too. Like, so instead of paying for it, you're kind of almost getting paid for it.
Well, I think that even if to go back to that first half of that statement, just the first part of that is paying for itself. Right. Sure. Because if you have to go, if you love this and you want to become a better strength coach or a better online coach, whatever the fuck it is, then you have to go try to put what you do out in a way that people can understand. You got to go through the thought process of what that's going to look like to be able to put it out. Then you're going to have to look up resources, hopefully not steal resources, look up resources. You got to educate yourself to be able to make that better. Mm-hmm. So when it's all said and done, even if it doesn't sell anything, you just got a semester worth of education, if not more, for free. You know, what's that cost now? You know what I'm saying?
And it's exactly what you're interested in too.
Yeah, exactly. What would be some other things like that you think that those people coming into the industry or are in the industry could do to make themselves work into a position that you're in now?
I think anytime you're producing content, make sure, you know, you're having to research it and stuff. And it doesn't matter what modality you're putting it out in, as long as you're actually researching and learning things along the way, is try to kill two birds with one stone like that for sure.
Yes.
That'd be like that.
Well, put the content out.
Put the content out, and then, you know, I try to make sure that it's, you know, quality content, because there's always been gimmicky stuff out. And sometimes there's outliers that last, but for the most part, it doesn't seem to last. I mean, if you don't have a personal problem with it, it doesn't seem to last.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, you know, there's always been trends, and you go through like any old Powerlifting USA and stuff, even people trying to sell weird stuff back then. It's not like a new thing.
How did you navigate that whole process? Because they were there when you were coming up too.
Yeah, for
right.
Sure.
So you're coming up, you're busting your ass, you have the practical experience, you have the education, you're putting the work in, but you're not getting the same result as some of these other people that are selling 100, 2,000, 300,000 ebooks, you still got to stay your course,
Right.
which you did. Like, how are you able to still stay your course without getting pulled? And because you've seen a lot of people start with the same course, right?
Right.
And then they get pulled that way. Now they're no longer around. They're doing roofing, as you said,
Yeah.
but they're no longer around. How did you stay that course?
I guess I guess I wasn't really tempted. I don't think you're a better version of being somebody else. So I think if like that's not your personality, like my personality is not to be like real gimmicky and crazy anyways. So like why would I start doing that now kind of thing? I'd rather just do what I'm gonna do and see what happens. Cause I wouldn't want to just do whatever just because at that point it's no longer a passion project. It's just doing whatever, and I could just do whatever some other way instead of make a fool of myself online.
Well, I know that, but being a younger you, it's a different
Yeah.
situation, right? So being a younger you broke,
Yeah.
right? You're still doing all this other work. And
Because I started, but I was already strength coaching for a long time and personal training for a long time. So I wasn't broke. I didn't need to
okay.
I didn't need to do any it was more like, to build up next level than like to get by. I never produced any content when I didn't have any money. I was building up the base to actually produce the content. I never wrote about anything I didn't actually do. It was all like years of work. Even the early books, because I've been doing this since I'm 16. I had my first book out at 30. So there's 14 years of doing this before producing any content besides did stuff for my website. I did some articles for Elite FTS. A couple, the T Nation ones were after the book. So that's basically what I did. I did got interviewed a few times on like different websites and things, but I all this content I personally produced. I guess the first article had been about 2009, and everything I'd already done this for a long time, so I never got to the point of like I've always said to people, always like I'll do like business consultations with people, and you always tell people the truth of like the best advice I can give somebody if someone's going to switch into this is keep your regular job, but then don't switch over till you're earning about the same amount of money, because you don't want to have to do gimmicky stuff. You don't want to have to work with people that are, if you have a bad client, if you're okay, you can just part company. It doesn't need a big scene and like, make a big deal about it. Just, just don't renew them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. Where if you need the money, you have to take whoever walks to the door, whoever contacts you, and that's not a good spot to be in. So it's a bad spot to be in. It's not a good way to build your business, because when you have to do whatever it takes to make a buck, it's tough to build a good brand, I think.
Oh, it is. So I've seen people, because what happens in that situation is that one person becomes two,
mm-hmm.
then three. Yeah. Then they end up with a bunch of people that they don't like. Then they just quit doing it entirely.
Yeah.
Where it would have been way easier just to say no and then wait for the next one. It's a longer process. What was the first book? I can't remember.
Metroflex, powerbuilding.
The Metroflex, right? So that one actually did pretty good.
That one did real well.
Which was interesting, right? Because usually the first one doesn't do so well.
That one, I think the difference was, well, I got a couple different ebooks people had sent me. I was thinking like 500 pages or something. People are putting out 30, 40 page books. Yeah. Oh, wow. I'll top this in a couple months. So I was like, I remember I asked you about it, and we were talking about a deadlift book, and I'm like, then out of the blue, I went to Bryant at Metroflex. I said, I want to do a book on powerbuilding. You want to do it with me? He said, all right. And then, so just went to work that night, and I contacted you, and he said, this is a much better market or something. I said, okay, perfect. Let's do it. And then kind of did that, and like, put a ton of routines in there. And I think that's what Charles Poliquin was saying. He liked the book so much because it had so many routines. He's like, this is a book I would have loved to have just, as a kid, just because it's so many different routines. And what I started doing from there was, it just, I think also was working with Johnny Jackson. I think Metroflex was like, besides Ronnie Coleman, it was like not too far after he was done. But then Branch was kind of at his best. Johnny Jackson was, all this kind of synergy and opportunity kind of like, and that's the good thing is you got to remember when you do these kind of projects, is sometimes the stars do align.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I remember I just checked my phone, like how much books I'm selling. I'm like, dude, this is great. But like sometimes you also have a really good idea and a really good, like, it's like the Tactical Strongman book. That's done really well, but it's done well over time. It wasn't like a record month right off the bat, like, okay, like, you know, kick back and go to Tahiti for a while and this will just take care of the bills. It was, but it's continued to do well because it's a damn good book. But it just didn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't synergistically timed to like how the universe was aligning at the time.
Well, then over a period of time, you amass 20, 25 books.
Right.
Right. Then even if they all don't sell well, they just all sell a little bit times 20.
Yeah, you can do okay.
You know, then you do okay with that.
For sure. And I think that's the thing is like, the nice part about it is you can continue to kind of like rack that up and stuff. I think, you know, while books aren't as popular as say like videos and stuff, the nice part about them is they can, I think there's always like a market for them. You know, there's always going to be like people that prefer books and all this stuff. So it's like the flip side of that is could be game time because like, you know, like what's that book, Red Ocean, Blue Ocean, where like the
Blue Ocean,
the Blue Ocean might start to get back to books again because like it was the ebooks in like 2003 and stuff when people that got on the bandwagon early were just killing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, you know, you can have the opposite happen where everybody abandons something and you're like sitting there alone and just.
Well, Blue Ocean's more about finding the strategy within
sure.
a niche within, you know, that big ocean. So you don't have to compete with everybody in that big ocean.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily, to me, it doesn't necessarily mean like newer.
Yes.
It means a strategy.
It's a strategy.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah. That whole, I use that strategy. So that whole strategy it's a strategy, you know, of business for that. So it's more staying within that. Now, what means the marketing may change, you know, what means the product may change, but the only change I would see is, you know, courses became popular, right? But the problem with courses with a lot of people is, you know, it's video and there's segments and it's time and it's a lot of different videos.
And is there, yeah. And like, it's like, you know, who you do the course too, is it like they want a certification out of it or they actually just want to learn? Because like a lot of times, like, you know, like I did a seminar for a gym in Australia. It's called Shredded. Actually, a lot of elite FTS equipment in there. Mm-hmm. And that was more a course for them, but there was no pretense of certification. But like Paula Quinn had done stuff there a lot. And it was more like an idea of like, they just want to learn. They're very good gym, very good trainers. They want to learn what they can. They're going to ask you like, you know, not like, hey bro, it's not squat or leg press. What's your thought? It's
yeah. They're good questions.
They're good questions. Yeah. And they didn't care about a certification. Like, they know they got a good gym. They're trying to bring the right education. But some people, you know, are more about a piece of paper. Like, you know, mm-hmm. They'd be wanting to get like if you wrote like the certification, they know you will write you and say, hey, can you just hook me up?
Well, I know. Yeah.
They just want to get through it. So it just depends on why someone's doing something. And I feel like I've done the course for ISSA. I've never like navigated my own course necessarily. And I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. I just hadn't got into that space. I like the book space. I like the videos because they're informal, but I've never gone to that kind of middle ground yet.
Mm-hmm. If you were to do a certification, what do you think that would look like? Just from the training sphere.
See, that'd be a tough one because
that's why I'm asking.
I don't know if it'd be like would I want to do it like of like everything I kind of do, like, you know, like different like segments of it, or is it more like just like, okay, here's the tactical one, here's the powerlifting one, here's the whatever type of thing. That would be I'd have to like, I mean, because obviously to make sense, it's got to make sense too. You can't just, you know, unfortunately I'm past the point where I can just like just do it for fun. Although I do find it fun, but like I got to, you know. So that's the key, I think, too, to the success of this kind of thing is like finding out ways to not bastardize things, but you can still do okay financially. But you realize sometimes, you know, you might have been able to do better had you been more gimmicky, but eventually it's going to bite you in the ass. And
I think long term it does. I really do.
I mean, yeah, because the people are doing like, unless you have a gimmick that's like uniquely your own, like there's some people that have something that's just like so uniquely their own, maybe it will stand the test of time just because they came up with it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, I agree. It doesn't seem to stick around.
Well, some of the gimmicky shit does, to rewind, some of the gimmicky shit does take off and does extremely well,
For
and
sure.
it can set somebody for life. But that's 0.001%. So what's the odds of that being you, me, or whoever? I don't know, but there's a risk to it. Like you try the gimmicky shit and it doesn't work once, and you try the gimmicky shit a different way and it doesn't work once. Now your credibility is not for shit.
It's not, because there's like these guys on YouTube, Dude Perfect, that are doing these trick shots, and someone was asking, I asked this kid, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm making a trick shot video in our neighborhood." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So you're like, somebody's already come up with this about 10 years ago. So if you're like legitimately trying to be a YouTuber, you got to come up with something new. The trick shots, the master has already spoken on the trick shot. You need something else. And like, because I think like that's another thing is, I think nowadays, like a lot of people, are becoming like, because of this stuff, is like more spectators than like participants in the game of life. And I think like I watch stuff like to me, if you're watching something, this is good because you're actually, like, the way I differentiate is, are you watching something just to be entertained? There's nothing wrong with wanting to entertain yourself, but if that's all you do, that seems to be a problem. Like, are you getting value from this? Are you learning from this? Because, that's kind of like, I think another reason I've had success too is I've never been into like the entertainment part. I like to be entertained, but like this industry is not something I find entertaining. I find it something I want to learn about and passionate about.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of been, and I think a lot of people, that's where they can go wrong at, for sure.
Were there any topics that you wanted to go over I didn't bring up? What are your notes there?
I got a ton of notes.
In
case we got anything else. I think we talked earlier about in the YouTube video a little bit about the master's training.
I don't think we got into the master's training that much.
So I talked a little bit earlier, doing something else about that, is like, so I got asked that question a lot about like masters lifters and like what's kind of the difference in working with a masters lifter versus, someone younger. And I think like so some of the strategies I jotted down about 6 of them here, and the ones I've kind of found of like a bullet point are really focused on form. So if you hit failure, okay, so technical failure is failure. Like that's how you got to leave it. That's failure. Okay. Lighter, another huge one I think is like, this is one I made a mistake being younger on, was lighter weight on single joint movements, of just like, pushing like curls and things to like a new limit, of pushing like triceps into a new limit, where I'd eventually I really had injuries except elbow surgery. And I think that was because I pushed those movements too far. But especially for masters lifters, you need to work on like on your accessory single joint movements, work on feeling the movement, work the muscle, not number hunt all the time. Like you don't need to, like, if you're benching 400, you don't have to do dumbbell tricep extensions with 100 pounds in each hand. Okay. Proper warm up. So in 3 phases, it's like a general warm up to get your temperature up 5 to 8 minutes or so, dynamic warm up, and then a specific warm up of the actual lift you're going to train. Also making sure when you're training your accessory movements that you want to, that you also do I think you need, like a lot of people go like say like warm up properly for bench press, but then you're going to do some kind of isolation movement ever. I think you do like 1 or 2 sets of the movement you're going to train lighter, just to kind of get that mind muscle connection going for sure. Extended work week. So unless you're like, training with a certain group of people on certain days, like I know you guys may have like a big squat day in here Saturday, I think, right? So that, I understand that if that happens, then you may have to like just kind of undulate your weeks or whatever, but making sure like, if you're not recovering well, you don't need to go to a 10-day week or 9-day week or something necessarily, but that's an option on the table. If you're not having to meet Joe to squat on Tuesday or something, you have that option. Making sure you're taking care of your sleep. Okay. I think a lot of people don't, it's been more emphasized lately. And I think deloading is more important for older lifters than it is for younger lifters. And that's a good chance. And you could make the argument to like completely take off or whatever, but I like those to kind of like just really hone in your technique and things like that, and kind of rekindle your mind muscle connection on those single joint movements.
If I'm to touch on a few of those, the one with And none of that, and then none of those on there do I think need to be pre-qualified, because the first thing I was thinking when you brought that up is what's the training age of the lifter beforehand,
Right.
right? None of those things have to be pre-qualified. But one of the things I've been trying to drive home to people for a long time is, what is the accessory lift that you're doing, and why does it need to be that heavy?
What's the purpose of it?
Right? Because if a tricep push down like is not going to necessarily drive your bench press, right, then why in the fuck are you using the whole stack and leaning over the machine? You know, you're doing it to develop muscle and build muscle.
For sure.
Get the full range of motion, and you're going to use less weight, less wear and tear. I mean, it's just learn how to train that. I call it training movements and training muscles.
100%.
Right. So that's something you train the muscles on. Now, if it's a close grip bench press, that's earlier in the training, you're training the movement. That's for strength. The other one's for hypertrophy. Trying to get that through people's head younger, I think, is important, because they'll figure it out when they get older, right? Because the shit's going to hurt. They're going to start wondering, like, why in the fuck does this hurt doing that? Plus, I think in powerlifting, especially with those movements like the tricep extension and some of these other ones, powerlifting is taking a sport and trying to create you're trying to take a motion that's already a reduced range of motion,
right,
and make it shorter by arching, pulling your ribs
100%.
up, whatever you're going to do. So now those joints are not being trained through the full range of motion at any point in time. So it might behoove them to take an accessory exercise at the end of the training session for the elbows.
For sure.
And, you know, let it stretch way back and get that full range of motion, shoulders, everything. And you don't want to do it heavy.
Absolutely not.
But get that full range. That's a big one. If you do get stuck, and I can explain how I manage this to where it is squatting every Saturday, you got to you got to think. Right? Because if that heavy set was heavier than you expected, or you know it's going to be heavier than you expected, are you willing to not do any of the accessory work that day? Because if that exceeds your recovery threshold, all your accessories are now gone, right? Now, if you exceed that threshold even more so, are you willing to change next week? Because if you go too hard, you just fuck next week, especially if it's week 2 of a 3-week phase.
Right.
Right. That week 2 is only to prepare you for week 3. Right. Now, if it takes away because you go stupid, then either week 3 has to change or not happen, or you got to do a lot of recovery shit between here and there.
For sure.
So it can be done, but you have to think the shit through. Like, where's this going to be? When you're 20 and 30, you just fucking do it, and like whatever, you recover. They don't work like that when you get a little bit older.
For sure.
Especially the range of motion stuff. That was a big one, because that one I think is part of the reason why I ended up as fucked up as I was, because you get all you don't realize what you're doing until you look back. Everything you did was not just a partial range of motion, but a super partial range of motion. Now it's a 3-board, a 2-board, you know, it's very small ranges. Like, well, where the fuck is the full, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Where is that full shoulder rotation? And like, oh shit, you wonder why it's no longer there, you know?
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't have taken a lot. Fucking static holds with a 20-pound dumbbell at the end of a workout for a minute.
Yeah.
You know, stupid things like that shouldn't be not known today, right? Because the information is out there. What's one of the other topics that you had there? I like that.
I said a little bit on, trying to think, I covered a lot of these already. On strongman training.
Yeah.
What about, so I like to use strongman training with a lot of, like, say, like tactical athletes, even like general population, even some of the powerlifting guys, you know, when we're not having a meet coming up. So it doesn't have to necessarily be like super heavy. It can be like work capacity stuff. So, you know, if you're, say, deadlifting 800 pounds, doing sets of 450 total for like, you know, 5 or 6 sets of 50 feet in the farmer's walk with a pretty short rest interval, that's not very taxing on you, because it's easier to pick up a farmer's walk than it is a deadlift. So I think it's a good way to develop work capacity. And, you know, I always say, like, the success of a strongman competitor, I mean, obviously there's little nuances of things you pick up, but the success to a competitor can come pretty fast, because it's not like I think you get a ton out of it for not having a super steep learning curve, if that makes sense. So like, I don't think most of the events to get a benefit from are going to take you a ton of time to learn.
Okay.
To be like maybe the best in the world at, you know, lifting a stone or something, like obviously that's a little different, but if you just want to get the benefit of picking up a sandbag and carrying it, you can probably show most people in a minute or two, and they're going to get something out of it. Because I love the thing I love about it was, Fred and I used to talk about this, was it's like functional training because it's irregular lifting, but it's heavy. That's, I feel like, the difference between that and like most normal functional training is that you're not sacrificing like all the weight to get something like that in. So I think it's a good barrier or good bridge between like more movement based stuff and more strength based stuff. So you know, if you're going to get into like actually moving kind of quickly and things, it's a good way to bridge the gap between that and like straight up powerlifting.
And then where do you put that in?
So for who?
For the power lifter.
I do it like after like off season, like we know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure. It wouldn't be like a type of thing. Although I've always got a lot out of doing sled drags with people, so I'll use those much more frequently, for sure. But like, yeah, like farmers walks and things like that would be further out from a meet. I mean, and also I think it's pretty interesting of like just, you know, how big strongman competitors are. You look at like in 2018, I think when I was in the book, they said like the average finalist in World's Strongest Man, or the average weight of the competitors, was 386 pounds. They move pretty damn well for being that big. I get, you know, they're not moving as well as someone 180 pounds, but 386 pounds, and a lot of them aren't even super tall, and they're moving like really well. So I've always thought that's one of the best ways to train. I hope more people read that book, because I don't know if I necessarily expect it because it's sold pretty well, but I think that's a big thing that people get a lot out of, carry over to a lot of things. I mean, I think it carries over to even like training Mrs. Jones or something, because those movements are functional. It may not be like, you know, yoke PRs, but just being able to carry a sandbag or something is going to transfer over to a lot of stuff in the general population person's
So
life.
then where does it come in if it's not the competitive power lifter? Just say it's a washed up meathead that's just training to train.
Oh, we could do it at any phase then, for sure. It doesn't have to be, it's just going to be, that's going to be more like, it's going to be a question of recoverable stimulus and volume. Then at that point of like, how much can you do? How quickly can you recover from it? Doesn't have to be like, for me, that's how I would like measure my strength more. Like, instead of like, I understand if you said, hey, you got to pick the heaviest wheelbarrow you can pick up and train for it. I understand that I'd have to hit more core lifts and things to get there. But for where I'm at now and how I'm training, that's how I'd measure my strength on different type of events I'd have set up for myself.
So either the time of the events or your ability to recover from the events?
No, like, what do you mean? Like, I'd be more like how long it takes to do one, or how much I can lift on it, not necessarily recover for it. I'm saying for like a test.
Yes, for the test, yes.
So for, you know, so that's the thing. I don't keep them for like powerlifters for too long, because we can start to get really good at them. So then all of a sudden, you know, if like, you know, you're doing all of a sudden like, oh, I picked up a 700-pound, you know, farmer's walk, I put a 700-pound trap bar and ran across the gym. Okay, you're starting to get too strong on this. Let's go to something else now, because then it becomes, you get so good at it that it's like it becomes a major stressor on your recovery. And it doesn't have to be, you know, where right off the bat, you hadn't done it before. So you're the 800-pound deadlift, you're the 450-pound farmer's walk. You get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
But it's really not, it's almost like bodybuilding training in the sense of it's not really fatiguing their central recovery. So I think you get a huge, you know, benefit from there. I also think, you know, I've jotted down a list of stuff on this another thing I'd say is interesting on it too is the hypertrophy. Is like a lot of the guys aren't direct, like for traps or anything, they're not directly training their traps. They're big, they're jacked, and they're other than the strongman training, the actual other training is not what you'd call traditional hypertrophy training by any stretch of the imagination, but they have a lot of muscle. So I think that's just an interesting observation. So kind of the things I've kind of emphasized to people on the safe execution was do your deadlifts overhand. If you're not training for a powerlifting competition, you have to grip the weight. You know, if you're not doing a hook grip or something, you need to do an overhand with straps for sure. No point of risking the bicep. And you're gonna get the grip work on the farmer's walks and things like that anyways. Never flip a wet tire or just basically be aware of the friction and things of the implements. Because I've seen people drop like a Husafelt and stuff on their toe at Metroflex when it's like, you know, 105 and high humidity. Can't grip it. So thinking technique over speed. So it's not necessarily going to be like, so I, for most people, it's a really safe event, like a backward sled drag for a pretty good distance. You want to be explosive to a degree, but you don't want to like try to like just always beat your time, because that's when bad things are going to happen. If like we just say took those boxes down, go to load up stones, it's going to be a lot safer to load 5 stones at doing each one individually, setting up to a degree and doing it, versus like if it's like a contest, you can't do that. You have to be as quick as possible. So I think the injury is more likely to happen when you just do more like real life, where it's like an emergency, you have to do it. And then I think the thing is progress slowly, because you can go really fast in this. So like say you're squatting 700 and you all of a sudden want to do a yoke and you hadn't done it before, like, oh, 600 is kind of heavy. Then like 3 weeks you're ready for 900. You wouldn't go up a normal lift that fast. You can't just be like doubling your weight on things, even though you're capable of
So
it.
are you gonna progress distance, or are you gonna progress weight?
Either one, but it wouldn't be to an extreme degree. So if, like, let's just say let's go 50 feet. You might get up to like 550, 600 by the end of like a 6-week block or something. It's not going to be like you could do 800 now and like, you're dying on it. We want to keep it. So that's like using strongman for the benefit of other things, not necessarily for the strength of strongman. And I think the other stuff was I had a little bit of stuff on, we covered already the kind of the resistance sprinting training, like the hills and things like that. Mainly I like sand, sled, hills, weighted vests, things like that. Just basically, if you're not like a legit sprinter or football player or something, I'm okay if you say, hey, you know what, that's gonna be a little too heavy, we're gonna screw up your cadence, we're gonna screw up your stride. I'm okay with that. I really am, because I would rather keep you safe and be 95% as effective, but you're really way more effective because you're never hurt. And I think, with some of the stuff I've gotten out of it too is explosive, a lot of the explosive training, I put some notes on there, is like one of the, like Anthony Schlegel and I were talking last night about kind of the benefits we've gotten with people with the trap bar jumps. I think that's just jumping with a trap bar. You don't really even go above 20% of your max on that. I used to do them, I think, too heavy. And that's not needed. You get a lot of the explosive strength carryover, and as long as someone can properly land, there's really no learning curve to it. Like all the throws, like you see all the stuff the strongman do with, like, you can just do it with a medicine ball, but like sandbag over bar, all that stuff that requires explosive triple extension, the minimal learning curve, I think, is a huge benefit, where a lot of times there could be other good choices, but they're going to take a lot of time for somebody to learn. So if it's a tactical athlete, am I going to get like, I say Harry Walker, but he actually wants to do the Olympic lifts. But like, if you say like, hey, you know what, like I have minimal time to train, we need to develop some explosive capacity here. Are we better off, cleaning a broomstick for 3 months and getting better at that? Or just like within 30 seconds, hey, make sure you get up like full extension, throw it over the wall. Okay, good. Let's do that. That's going to be more practical in a lot of settings. So it's not necessarily like Olympic lifting is bad, because it's not. It's just like, what do we have time to, and how can we, how can we maximize this time? What's the most economical decision here to make, kind of thing. And I was thinking, the other thing I would say is, this is just a kind of a random observation I put in there on the tactical training, is lately I've had a lot of luck. I don't say luck, really good results using kind of, what reverse linear periodization is. So basically the idea is you're going to stress those tissues. Kind of, I was talking about with sprinting. I've had this like, last few years, some really good results doing like more reverse linear stuff for speed training, and for especially for like the kind of like the lower end or lower distance tactical assessments. So like a 400 meter, 300 meter, whatever it is, like, okay, I want to get you to say 50 seconds of 300 meter. Okay. So that means, 25 seconds to 150. And we kind of keep drawing that distance out in a reverse linear periodized way. And I've had really good luck with the tactical athletes and people training for specific conditioning tests using the reverse.
How long is that spread out?
It wouldn't matter. So it could be anywhere from like, depending on how much time we have. So
it won't matter. I get it. Because it's
doesn't
different.
Matter.
It's different because you're going the other way. Yeah.
And usually it's gonna be dictated to you, like, hey, they said in the next 6 weeks we're going to test this. Okay, great, let's do it. So I've even done some of that with I had a female client that it was doing these rucking competitions, and like she was actually competing she was actually like doing a lot of courses that only men had been able to do before. And what we did there was, I would, do some of the longer distance stuff, but like really working up those like shorter distances like that at the speed she needs. And a lot of times you're going to be able to hold on to that in a competitive situation, even if you didn't work all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ian King had written about reverse linear periodization. I know the East Germans did it too. So I've always been, for like a lot of the speed stuff, but a lot of times it doesn't make sense when you think about that as like, I'm going to run, like if somebody's never ran before, I said earlier,
Yeah.
I'm a fan of getting you to do tempo runs, just get used to the movement. But if you're already in that kind of shape, like to do like, I don't know what, like from a pure speed standpoint, if you're going to run 11 seconds for 100 meters, is it that helpful to build pure speed with, 15 seconds? And maybe for a tempo run to build your work capacity, but for the training effect of, acceleration, velocity, things like that, it ain't going to do that. So I think just like that was a random note I put in there. Just I've had really good results with that lately.
Anything else you got there? Or did that wipe it all?
I got a little bit about neck training, but
no, we want to go into
let's go into neck training.
Yeah.
That book is sold damn good. I forgot Tactical Shield Training.
Yes.
It's sold outstanding. It absolutely has. And that was one of those ones that like you tell people about it, they're like, are you crazy? You're writing a book about neck and traps. And other people are like, that's like genius. It's like, it depends who you talk to.
No, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Like neck work is major.
It is major. And it doesn't really require very much. So I think, obviously people like the, in this sphere community, whatever we want to call it, it's going to be a desired look. I think, but like outside of this, it's kind of like there's all these studies that show, every pound of, neck extension strength you increase, you're going to have like less chance of concussion, all that. So it's kind of like your insurance policy for a lot of the contact sports. And it's interesting to me that people can claim to be so-called like sport specific specialists or whatever they call themselves for football or any contact sport, and they don't train neck. That's bizarre because, if you're just, I like ladders for activate. I don't think they transfer necessarily to the agility. It's totally different, but I do like them for the activation. I'm not anti-ladder, but you could be a good tap dancer and have those kind of quick moving feet, not necessarily be any kind of threatening kind of athletic situation. But if you don't have a strong neck, you have a higher chance of, it's not my opinion. It's, I like to say it's science, but it is. I mean, so I think besides that, it's going to, there's also potential irradiation. People have talked about, like Paul Quinn was talking about how it could potentially transfer to even things like bicep curls and things like that. I personally haven't made as much of an observation there. Like, I don't think I want to sell more books, but I'm not going to tell you if you start working your neck, your bench is going to necessarily increase.
Well, I will say though, with what I see just with lifters, right? You get a bigger lifter, their head has to weigh 90 pounds. His head's so goddamn big, right? Yeah. They got to be able to hold their head up.
For sure.
Right. So a lot of times they don't have the neck strength just to hold their fucking head up. Right. So now if that's creating bad posture, which is going to carry over to a lot of the accessories that they're doing.
Well, also just keep, if you're benching with style where you keep your head down and stuff, that can help too, kind of like almost drive into the pad, because I think a lot of times people could benefit from, not everybody, but people could benefit from keeping their head down. Cause it's like, if you just think about it, you go like this, you feel your upper back get tighter. I don't need to like make it intentionally go like this.
Yes.
If I go like this,
well, that's what I'm talking about.
Tighter.
Yeah. I don't want people to think I'm telling people to look up into the air. It's driving the head back, right?
Yes.
You need neck strength to do that.
Yeah, absolutely do. And I think that you could potentially have some transference right there.
Oh, most definitely.
And so that I think that would, like, it's not necessarily a 1-for-1, like get your neck stronger, bench with 20 pounds, but I think over time you could see that. He was talking about stuff with the biceps too. And I think, you don't really need so most people aren't training their neck, period. So like a little bit will go a long way. So some of the studies are showing like literally like 2 sets a week of 20 reps, you get substantial increases in your neck size and strength. It doesn't have to be like, basically the program in the book is for the neck part, because there's basically 2 parts to it. There's a trap there's a routine in there if you want to. There's just a neck routine. So if like Dave has his own routine, but wants to add a neck workout, here's about 5 minutes, 3 times a week you can do. And it's basically 3 sets of 20, you know, on neck flexion, neck extension, side neck, you know, lateral flexion, and then like rotation, 2 sets of 25 against a band. And you do that 3 times a week, you get results. But that probably even is too much. If you had, I mean, not too much, like it's going to overtrain you. Just, you could start off with a third that and probably get decent results. But most people that are buying the book have already done something. So
yeah,
it's not necessarily catered towards beginners. However, I do think for the most part, a beginner could be fine doing what's in there. It's not like crazy, like we need to have like this volume tolerance because of like 20 years of whatever, you know, kind of thing. So I think, you know, a lot of stuff got good results in there too, was even doing stuff like, some of it I think pretty interesting is I think farmers walks are huge for building the traps. I think there's, I think there's some, I think the traps grow under like a stretch load. So when you get, you know, everybody thinks this, I think when you get this, you actually get something. There was a kid in Thailand that was working all day on a farm or something. And have you seen this kid? How big his traps are? He's like 10, they're like up to his ears, but he was carrying buckets all day. And I couldn't believe the picture. Maybe I probably should.
Yeah.
I can't verify it's true, but I'm saying it's unbelievable. But I can verify it's true. There's all sorts of strongman that have huge traps that aren't directly doing trap work.
Yes.
From the farmer's walk. That's indisputable. So I think there's a huge thing in that. So the program, I've posted some of the things on Instagram before of like the transformations, and it's like amazing what people get, because I mean, the program is good, but it's also they hadn't done it before too. So you get kind of like the right program, the right
double the results, right?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And people like it and they think it's fun, and it's an entertaining book. It was a fun one to write for sure. And trying to think, the other thing would be like touching a little bit on grip strength. Got a book on grip strength. And I think, you know, that's been huge for like the tactical populations, just because there's like there's stuff of like, you know, you picking things up, just like, you know, even like stuff that's like rappelling up and down ropes, like the marksmanship of being able to properly hold a weapon. If you've ever done anything like that, you know, it's not easy. And then like, you know, being able to do any kind of like medical emergency or like hand-to-hand combat or any of that kind of stuff, your grip strength is extremely important. Again, that doesn't have to be like, you know, a really complicated thing. I think one thing people don't think about is grip training is highly specific. It's like anything else. So I can get a good pinch grip and not necessarily have a good supporting grip on a deadlift. Like the transference, I'm sure is there to a degree, but it's much more minimal than you think. Like, so if you're dropping your deadlifts, don't buy grippers. It's not going to necessarily help you. If you want to do grippers, that's great, but it ain't going to help your deadlift grip so much. So I think they're like, that's one thing people miss on the grips is like the specificity of all, like, you know, it's the specific adaptations to impose demands. And like, this is not necessarily going to help you.
So if they're dropping their deadlifts, what should they do?
I mean, like things like farmer's walk, overhand deadlift holds, things like that. Even like Ed Cohn would like put plates in between his, you know, where he'd lose the grip and just do holds like that and things like that. You know, you got to do it. Even so, I think even matters in diameter. I think you could get like a lot better. Say you're deadlifting 900 pounds, you're dropping it. And just because you get better on an axle bar that's much thicker isn't going to, at least won't provide you a 1-for-1 transference, like just doing overhand deadlift hold work. I've seen people in Strongman that I've trained with that were really good with the fatter bars, and it didn't necessarily, it didn't transfer 1-to-1 to a normal size bar.
Interesting. So the specificity is way more important with grip than it is across the board with a lot of other things.
Yeah, it's on, or at least on par with it.
Yeah.
I mean, because like, I would say like, you know, the thing is like, you get stronger at squatting by squatting opposed to leg pressing, but it's not like leg pressing is like useless.
I get it. Yeah.
I don't know where the line would be, but it's certainly not a 1-to-1. That's for damn sure.
Any other things?
What else you got for me? Okay, let me see what else I got here.
I'm through my list, man. I'm going through your notes now. This is fun.
Okay. I would say, I think something really interesting that Fred Hatfield and I used to talk about And this would be when I train a lot on de-inhibition training and like being able to handle, you know, like super maximal loads and things like that. And I think that's one thing I kind of you said, what I made a mistake on Metroflex was looking back on it. I think like, you know, for example, getting someone to handle a heavier squat, you know, I don't think now I wouldn't think they need to walk it out of those rickety racks. You can just pick that weight up and hold it for 5 seconds. Yeah, it's not the exact same thing as walking it out. I'm sure you get a slightly better training effect for sure from walking it out, but is that necessary? You know, like,
Yeah.
if we're just like on bench press, like we can do like either a static hold with like, you know, 10% of your max, hold it for 5 seconds, or even just like even a weight releaser would be something like that. So I think it's because your body has built-in, you know, protective mechanisms that's not going to let you fully fire. And how do you inhibit those? Like by handing super maximal loads, I think is one way. I think the other way is like, you know, any kind of explosive movement generally does it. Compensatory acceleration training, any kind of isometric training. So like, because the isometrics, like we were talking about earlier, you're producing like 15-20% more force than you could concentrically. So that's inhibiting what would be stopping you, say, from lifting up a deadlift kind of thing. So I think those are things people need to look at that are more advanced, but they have to be cyclically, you know, not all the time. Like we're talking about like, you know, 6 weeks at a time or something, a couple times a year, rather than like,
well, they're harder to recover
they're harder from recover from.
Yeah.
And if some of them aren't though, like if you're in like, you know, get Julius Maddox to, you know, hold 900, that'd probably be pretty hard to recover from. But like if you're benching 300, say, you probably can hold 330 for 5 seconds and it's not going to just kill you.
Yeah.
So I think there's that. Like I said, the explosive movements, jumps, throws, things like that are very, very helpful. The isometrics. Trying to think of what else. I think the other thing is people always ask me, like, just besides like, you know, basic markers of where people are strength wise, how to, like, other information I look at in designing a program might be helpful to go over is like, basically with anybody I work with, I'm, you know, after talking to them in initial assessment, asking questions, things like that, I would start with like generalizations of like, you know, okay, if women are going to recover faster than men, and basically kind of like, what are generalizations for lifters that make sense from there? From there, I would look at what's going on and kind of update the information. So for example, if I notice like, you know, I haven't nailed you down of what type of, if you're someone more explosive, fast twitch, or someone slower, okay, you're supposed to do an AMRAP on your last set of tricep extensions, and I'm expecting 13 reps to get 30. Okay, that's starting to lead me to believe that you're more of a slow gainer. So from there, I can start to look at, okay, let's start to push the volume a little bit higher than I normally would. How do you adapt to that? How do you recover from that? What kind of stimulus do you get from that? Then I can make those kind of, you know, nuances from there. And I think that's where kind of a lot of the experience pays off, of not just like, you know, I don't know, I can't at this, I don't say I can't. At this point, I have not been able to bottle this into a formula where I say like, this person needs to do this, and here's the 6 principles, and let's move on. I would like to get to that point one day, and I think I can, but I don't have that yet. I know what I need to do.
I know what you're talking about. I have a lot of the same framework in my head, and it's almost like I need somebody else to help me explain what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like if you were to explain it to somebody else and they can like see it in a different way, then they might be able to regurgitate it out.
Well, I think a lot of times this helps do projects with people that aren't necessarily experts in the same field.
Yeah.
It's like we're like writing books together. I'll ask a Dom, like, he's like, do you mean this? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right.
That's what I'm talking about.
So then you get somebody that's not doing the same thing. And when I was in some articles for bodybuilding.com, I had a few different editors, they were all good, but one of them didn't know anything about lifting. And it actually turned out to be like the biggest blessing in disguise. And he's like, oh, I understand what you're saying now. And like one day he wrote me, he's like, trust me, if I understand what you're saying, you know, everybody's going to understand it, because he's like, I'm just like a normal writer, dude. I'm not like in lifting kind of thing. And it actually turned out to be really helpful. So I would say from there, you know, any kind of generalization you have about people going into the program design, remember it's a generalization, not a law. There's gonna be outliers and you could be wrong and all that stuff. So I would look at next, like, you know, what are we training for? Like what kind of movement patterns are involved? What kind of energy systems, things like that? Are you playing, you know, football where alignment, it's like 5-yard bursts, you know? Even like you know, I think people talked about the approach of the team or individually, you know, whatever you're doing, like if you're in football and it's a running offense, the strength you might need would be different than somebody that's just pass blocking, if you're using that offensive line example. And then of course, looking at the total cost of the finite reserve, we only have a finite mental, physical, whatever type of energy. There's only so much a person can give before, like, you know, if we look at it as a cup of tea, like Charlie Francis would say, we're pouring it in there. Eventually it starts to spill and overflow. When that happens, that's not good.
Yes.
So how do we get there? We're gonna have to like figure some things out. So planning, furthermore, is like what, you know, obviously the overarching objective. What information do we already have? How long are we planning for? Is this person anticipating to be like a client for 12 weeks and just wants to hit their biggest total and they're on to something else? Or is just somebody that like viewing this as long term? I wouldn't, you know, I don't need to know if like someone's gonna, if I ask somebody that, I'm not saying like, are you like, you're signing your name here, like what the hell? It's more, but like, how do you view this? Okay,
but it matters though.
It matters because if we're planning out for the next year, it's different than planning out for 12 weeks of like, you know, and there's nothing wrong with you for 12 weeks at all. But like, if you say all I care about is how much I lift for 12 weeks, that's different than I want to be the best I can in 12 years from now.
No, but I can throw this out to potential clients. So you don't want to do that and then come back and say, I want to go another 12 weeks again, and then another 12 weeks again, because that fucks your strategy up.
Well, I think, yeah. So luckily you have a real high retention rate so this isn't like much of a problem.
Yeah.
But like generally what happens if someone says only 12 weeks, now I want to do another 12 weeks, would be okay. Cause then they'd start to see that their person's a long-term client. And they probably did the 12 weeks for like a meet to get ready for a meet. So they'd be set up to go into like a more off-season phase anyway. So it would naturally work itself out most of the time, thankfully. But you got to look at also, besides the long-term goal, is the reality of where we are here right now and what can we do. So like okay, so then like what equipment do you have access to? That's an important question to ask. Like, okay, if you have access to this, it's a lot different than like my shoulder's shot to shit and I got a barbell and a squat rack and a bench in my garage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a frustrating point sometimes when people like, because I love training my garage and it's a cool like kind of idea and stuff. But like if you're all banged up, bare bone basics, unfortunately, a lot of times aren't going to cut the mustard. You have to like go somewhere where you have access. Like, yeah, I get, you know, standing cable decline presses is not as cool as benching heavy. I'm with you on that, but it sure as hell beats doing nothing.
Yes.
So you have to think about that. The level of person you're working with, or if it's a team, like the level of athletes, what's the level of, you know, what time commitment can you give me? So are we going to, you know, can you do, I always say we're better off adhering 3 days a week to the program than doing like, you know, 4 or 5 and you missing all the time. You know, what can you commit to? What are your preferences? Like if we can get the same training effect out of, you know, saying like a front, you like say you like a front squat and I like a safety squat or something, we're getting a pretty similar training effect and it's for powerlifting, not to compete in that movement. Why wouldn't I just let you do the front squat then? I think we can go to people's preferences without bastardizing it. Like that's again, like the art of this is like, how can I work to your preferences without making this a freaking circus? And that's the problem is once you start getting people, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that. And you have to tell the person, look, we can do all this, but do you, you know, I just tell people straight up, do you understand we're compromising results? If you're fine with that, unless you're going for like a world record or something, I'm fine with that too. Cause look, I'm here to help you hit your goals. And I'll admit, like I do stuff sometimes that would compromise for results to a degree. And that's fine by me. I always think about 90% or so. If I can get about 90% the effect with 100% of the passion and fun, I'm cool with that. But like, I don't want to go down to like 50% kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Then even like when working with teams and stuff that I've encountered and people like commercial gyms, like the flow of exercises, like I like to superset a lot of stuff, but like if you're working out in New York City in Manhattan, a commercial gym, you ain't supersetting stuff. If you move, that's a lot of funny thing with the Jailhouse Strong is how the rest pausing thing came up is talking to guys at the gym and the mechanical advantage drops and all that stuff is they couldn't move off a piece of equipment for what they were saying. Like once you got the bench press, but you snooze, you lose. So you go get a drink of water or something. It's gone. Yeah. That's how a gym in Manhattan would be. You know, that's how working at the Kennedale High School, when we had so many people in the weight room at one time, I was a strength conditioning coach. So when I first started doing stuff with you guys on the team was that time. And it was crazy how I always thought it was, I remember getting there thinking, I hear people lifting on a whistle. That is like sacrilege to real lifting. That's the dumbest thing I ever said. Within like 2 months, I'm on a whistle.
Mm-hmm.
And I like basically realized a lot of people there didn't know lifting, but they can add. So I'd have like them walking, like other coaches that didn't know anything, walking around like cops, checking the weight room, and then basically teach them things along the way, and they can help out more. But like it was like they supposed to have a certain amount of weight, like because we'd have like misloads and things of what people should be lifting, and then before like make them do like there'd be some kind of punishment if they screwed it up. Within like 2 weeks, everybody had it. They'd have it written down. They might even have like it was like 285. You'd have like 2 plus 25 plus 5. So if they couldn't do math that fast, they had it taken care of ahead of time. So we have to look at the flow of the exercises. What's your vision versus reality kind of thing of everything we're doing, and then the learning curve. I think the learning curve is huge. Of like, if you want to get good at some really complex stuff, that's great. We can do that. But it may not be worth it. Okay, I want to be more explosive. So, okay, let's just do some medicine ball throws and some trap bar jumps, and there ain't no learning curve for that hardly. And but if you want to get really good at snatching, that's fine. But that's not going to be something we can just come out 100 miles an hour at. It's going to have to work up to that, and it's going to be a longer process. So making sure all those kind of things I think are important to like what I look at and how I'd start somebody. So, and then from there, going into the Fred Hatfield categorize the 7 granddaddy laws. I always call this like the constitution of training. Of like basically, in judicial law, in theory, judges are supposed to adhere to the Constitution. So they don't like, it's not really what my opinion is.
Yes.
It's what the law says. So I may disagree with the law, but if I'm being honest, I have to rule with what the law says. So this is the same type. This is our Constitution for training, is basically looking at these 7 granddaddy laws, like the law of individual differences. And I think, Fred used to have me do, I did some for ISA, and I did some more recently for my own newsletter of just basically like rating some of the like more popular programs out there of like how they adhere to the 7 granddaddy laws. What's funny is like ones like P90X actually did a lot better than you'd think. And
interesting.
And then like some of the ones you wouldn't think like, didn't do as well. But anyways, so the law of individual differences. So generally, unfortunately, if something has a name, and I sell programs, so I'm just being honest, it can't really adhere to it. I can make this kind of adhere to it though. For example, like that's where things of like AMRAP and RPE and stuff can be very helpful, because we can get closer to that law of individual differences. Because if I say 85% for max reps, that is still, if Dave gets 8 and I get 3 and we both push the max limit, we're closer to those individual differences. There's 3 sets of 3. Okay. But overload and overcompensation. So basically any program you buy that's made should adhere to 6 of these principles. If you're working with a coach, you should have 7. And hopefully if you buy one, it's going to be like 6.5, because you can kind of get that. And that's my goal when I make those. And I feel like I've gotten better at that because people have gotten really good results with them. But law of individual differences, everybody's different. You change over time. Like if you're a biological organism, you're not the same organism you were 7 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It could be you age, you train, your work capacity decreases, increases. Like, it's amazing. Like the guy I was talking about earlier, Harry Walker, is like how much more explosive. He was not fast when I first got him, like 12 years. He's freaking fast and explosive. Now he's a totally different person. Like if Tom Havlin weighs 400 pounds, what he got up to, he's different than when he weighs 300 pounds. If Julius Maddox is that, even like Jeremy Horns is a different person when he's squatting and deadlifting, heavier and all that kind of stuff. It's like a different ball game. You know what I mean? So the law of individual differences, and then amongst people of like, how well their genetics, all that stuff. Overload and overcompensation, to make Mother Nature overcompensate, you must stress your muscles beyond what they're already used to. So that's what I always joke around. People make fun of progressive overload, but everybody's doing it in some different way. Yeah. Because if you're doing like, say, a 12-inch hassock squat with a safety bar, and you cycle back to that once a year or once every 6 months, you still want to beat that number. So you're just doing you have a lot more variety in your progressive overload, but at the end of the day, you want to somehow beat something you did before. And that was kind of that was the fun part about training with like Paul and Art and them. They had like they had like all their different exercises and stuff, and they always would somehow find a way to beat it. And like, it might be like by 5 pounds, and it might have been
Different stance.
difference. Yeah, just no, they were pretty, they're honest.
They were pretty honest.
They're pretty damn honest,
Right.
like for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know you can get like different
Yeah.
high bar to low bar,
Yeah.
all sorts of things. Yeah, no, they're
So it was
legit.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then set and specific adaptation to pose demands and specificity adaptations, like we were talking about earlier, are highly specific. The general adaptation syndrome is just kind of your super compensation, and the disuse principle is just you basically use it or lose it. And you think about, there's all the different ways you can overload your training. I mean, that's a great point on the stance. You could go the opposite too, though, where you make it harder. Like that's one thing I liked about Poliquin's progressive overload is a lot of times he would make the movement harder. Like you're kind of like, you probably can't keep it the same weight, but you kind of like, you go from like deadlift to snatch grip, deadlift to deficit snatch grip, deadlift. Like you keep making that exercise harder. So it's the same exercise, but like you extend the range of motion. You could, obviously the easiest way is just add more weight. But, if you keep, adding more weight, you're going to, like in your deadlifting, 200 pounds every week,
you're going to run out.
4 years, you're out deadlifting Derek this way by, 500 pounds or something, or all these kind of things, or, but like you look, but it obviously does work. And that's the beginner way. I think that's why like things like starting strength and stuff have some success, because a lot of times stuff gets so complicated. And I do think people oversimplify this stuff a lot, and it can be unfortunate, but however, in the beginners, you can't oversimplify it. No. And 5 pounds a week can go
wild.
Why not just go that for a while and just see what the hell happens?
Yeah, exactly.
Not a problem. So you have the load progression. I think you have like a density progression you can look at too. I'll use, especially in the off season, is like trying to get the same amount of work done in less time. And that's been another one of our books that's done really well is tactical density training. Is basically there's in that book, there's more of there's called the Chippendales Ready program, which is more like, be ready for the stage, or the G-rated version be the beach. Or then you have like the more like tactical, which would be more functional, of like strongman movements, neck training, things like that. There's 2 different ways to do it, but the whole idea is to get, the workouts basically divided into 4 quarters. You want to get each thing you're doing of your main movement, your accessory movements done with basically more work or the same amount of work in less. You got a couple different options progression. You either keep the load the same and keep getting more done in less time, or you can increase the load. You got a couple different options, but you can't increase the time you're doing it. So if you're doing your farmer's walks, so you have to get 6 sets of 50 feet done in 10 minutes. You can go down to 9:30, or you could add, 20 pounds and stay within the parameters. So you got a couple different ways to do it, because obviously you get stronger, you get more creative. Like I said before, I like the exercise progression. For bodybuilding stuff, and too, is like, I think some of the increased intensification techniques, like you were talking about the rest pause and stuff. Even if we say, hey, the study shows drop sets are just as effective as regular training, but like it's fun, like to the mental part of it, being excited about training, I think people love it and it's fun. A lot of those techniques is like, you watch like Johnny and Branch and those guys train. They're having fun. I mean, it's not, they're loving what they're doing. I don't think they would if it's just always just straight sets, regardless of the effectiveness.
No, I agree. I mean, sometimes I call some of those things challenge sets.
Yeah.
And it may not do what you think it's doing, but you love it. So there's the trade-off.
I mean, I can't see how it wouldn't, to a point.
I can't either.
I mean, I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I know.
It's like you're pushing to that. If you've ever done, I mean, I guess if what you feel when it's happening, the acute effects, and then like even like the next day or two, like, I don't know, when I've done those kind of chest workouts, you go across with some soap and you're all cramped up and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I mean, if the shit's cramping, you probably worked it.
I think something's working there. But
yeah.
I guess I haven't done like EMG readings or anything to prove that. So I think if I got anything else for you on here.
No, I think what you just went over is vital though, because anybody, if they want to be a strength and conditioning coach or trainer, what you basically went over first was a needs analysis, right? The second part of that was just program design. And if they're not a coach or a trainer, but they're an athlete and they're working with a coach or a trainer, they should be going through a needs analysis and somebody that has program design. So it's a way to kind of vet who they're working with. And if they are the athlete, they should also, I've always kind of said this, even if they are an athlete and they have a coach, they need, if they're really all in, they need to educate themselves enough to be able to ask their coach better questions, right? Because superficial questions from your athletes don't do you shit.
Yeah, like, what's the point of this? Like,
yeah, I mean, if they ask you good questions and you got to really stop and think, then they're going to become better athletes.
Yeah.
And that's on them. That's not on you, because you can't read their fucking mind. Right. And
it's funny, if we're with athletes, I've had both of people that like, I don't really care why this works. I just know it does. And let's keep going. Then I have people that like want to go deep on it and stuff. Like, so.
Well, most coaches don't do what you just said.
Well, I was talking like Dawson, a guy named Dawson went in the other day, and he was like talking to him. It was like, this dude's like deep. I mean, we talked for a while, and he's a really smart kid, you know, he's, and like, then other people, like, they're not stupid. They just like, I mean, I have like certain things I like to do that's just for fun that I don't need to know like why it does what it does. I mean, I don't really, I like the benefits of electricity, but I don't really care to know how or why it works. It just does.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people are that way with training, and that's fine by me too. I don't feel a need to like go on like the soapbox and educate somebody who doesn't want to be educated on, you know, to a degree, like I need to know like the basics, but if they do want to, that's a different story.
Yes.
I just, you know, I think you have to meet people nowadays at the level they're at.
Sure.
And, you know, yeah, I think that's important for sure.
Anything else you got over there?
I think mainly I'm happy I've got the cigar to light for more than about 30 seconds. I'm trying to think what else we got here. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the I think we talked about I think one thing is we talked already about the slow gainers and fast gainers a little bit, or quite a bit. I think we talked about a little bit conditioning in general for powerlifting is not like in your training. So like I try to get as much done as we can in the training. So if I'm getting you, like you are getting some conditioning, if we're doing sled drags, a bunch of sets in the off season, that kind of stuff, that's great. You know, like I'm not into like spending an hour. I remember I had like an epiphany in India doing a seminar there. They're really nice people, worked really hard, did really good, but it was amazing how much time they just wasted like doing mobility and like just holding these slow stretches, but like they couldn't really get into, when I had them actually do some movement based stuff, like they couldn't really do like much of the strongman stuff or that kind of thing, but they could necessarily hold a stretch for a while. Or it was like, I'm saying like, I want to get as much of this stuff done in training as we can, like going through a full range of motion and stuff. Like, so you're talking about like doing like certain movements that are partial range of motion, but what if we could do like some ass to grass split squats with your body weight at the end of the workout? Then we got all this covered, and we don't need to like, unless you just like, I understand if you like to foam roll for an hour and stretch because you get relaxed after like your version of floating, that's fantastic. Continue to do that. I personally wouldn't like that. I like to, when I'm training at a gym or something, I like to be, when I'm done, you know. I don't find it relaxing there. It's kind of like heightens me when I go in there. It doesn't relax me. I love it, but it doesn't get me relaxed. It gets me excited. But when I'm done training, I don't need to be that excited.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So I think what I've kind of found with powerlifters is conditioning wise, about 2 hours a week, you don't have detriment for the most part to your strength. So like if you're going like your heart rate, like, you know, at 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So for most people, it's gonna be like walking briskly. Yes, rucking is cool, but you probably don't need to do it yet. You could probably just get away with walking if you hadn't been doing anything. And that's going to be about that sweet spot where you get good health benefits, but you're not going to be detrimental to all your training, I don't think, at 2 hours a week. And it's not super important how you break it up. I mean, I probably wouldn't start just going 2 hours at a time and be done with it, but I don't think it matters if you're going like 30 minutes or like 45 minutes, 30 minutes or something, whatever it is.
I'd be happy if most would do 15 minutes 3 times a week.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying what you max out. Where I'm saying, if you do 2 hours a week or less, the odds of you having detriments to your strength are very low. So if you got to meet in 6 weeks from now and you've never done this before, I probably wouldn't start it now. I'd start it after just in case of anything. But I do think you're safe going 2 hours or so a week in that zone. And so, you know, what, you can even do stuff like, I mean, just the non-exercise way of doing this kind of training is like, if you're not doing like anything, literally like, you know, start taking the stairs, park further away, you know, take your kids to the park and engage with them there or something like that. You can do all sorts of stuff like that. And that you're, if you haven't been doing anything, that's doing something. I remember Tom Platz was talking about the first ISSA, you know, seminar I ever went to was talking about, you know, just parking further away. I'm like, you know, it sort of sounds like a joke. You're like, are you kidding me? But then you know, I watch people, you know, at a normal commercial gym, they're not going there to squat any big weight. They'll fight for a half hour to park 10 foot closer.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, if you just start, I mean, if that's your mentality now, imagine if you start parking the furthest spot in the lot.
Well, I don't think they understand that doing nothing is more detrimental than if they were doing 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's going to inhibit their recovery. You know, and it's maybe not if their training density is high.
Yeah.
Right. But as a power lifter, their training density shouldn't be.
You know what's funny about that with me? I always for meets would do like, I know I generally like to do like active stuff with people and stuff, but I found at the end I did my best just laying around. And I, just because it's psychological, because I feel like I get heightened when I go in the gym. So I just stay out of there. I felt better.
Well, for how long are you speaking?
Like the meets on Saturday, on, you know, do the last session on like Monday.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I understand that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm speaking 12 weeks out. They just don't do shit anytime, right?
No.
You know, the last week they probably will do better, you know, with that, but they're not recovering from session to session to session because they're not moving nutrients. I mean, they're just in poor fucking shape.
Yeah, we talked a little bit already about the off-season stuff. I think like we took the best, you know, muscle hypertrophy for powerlifting is your best weight class is going to be the one you're most muscular in with your minimal body fat. So that's why we're kind of talking about the powerlifting training. Unless you're super heavyweight, you get fatter. Increased muscle mass is increased strength potential. We already talked about that. I think also, you know, there's the thing of like, I think we've talked about a little bit of the isolation exercise, but I think that is something that's lacking a lot of times. And I think for strength athletes, it's like, there's a lot of benefit to you can just like learn to feel a muscle work. So then by doing that, you get more out of those exercises, period. It's like, Dave, you call it movement muscle. I call it movement intentional muscle intention. Yeah. You want to feel either the movement executed, you know, focus on the movement or focus on the muscle. And I think it's a good chance to actually focus on the muscle. Obviously, there's correcting your imbalances. Like if there's something weak, there's some weak link in the chain. If like your hamstring's weak and you've been squatting for 10 years and they're not coming up, squatting is not working. You have to do something else at that point. And I think, you know, it's going to cause compensatory movement patterns or something else, or at least not get stronger. I think, you know, more muscle protects you, gives you more confidence. That's a powerlifting thing. But I think also, I think what else we got here. Yeah, we talked a little bit before about just kind of the good work capacity. So you're able to blow past your initial phase of your meet prep, quote unquote. I think I had another note in here. With also getting kind of the traps stuff too. The deal is, I think a lot of people is just kind of a weird thing is like, you know, the limiting factor of why are you doing something? So if you're doing like something for your traps, I don't want to hear that your grip gave out. You know what I'm saying? Because people will be like, hey, you know, I was doing like snatch grip shrugs. I just couldn't hold on the bar anymore. Well, are we doing this as a way to build your grip for deadlift? I mean, that's a possibility maybe, but then fine. But like, if this is for your traps, like what is limiting the effectiveness of this exercise?
Yeah.
It's the strap. So I think that's a important one to think. I think, you know, the mind muscle connection we're talking about earlier. I'll just share a few things I've kind of used to kind of enhance that with people is basically first off acknowledging it's real. Like a lot of functional trainers will they don't think it's a real thing. They think if you just do the movement with a semblance of good technique, that's that and be on your way. And that's not true. Like it's definitely a real thing. There's science to validate it. There was one study showing that basically, it's interesting though, it basically showed if people selectively try to activate the advanced lifters, selectively try to activate their pecs while they're bench pressing, they were able to like really get a better EMG rating. But when they got above 8, it was about like 50% of their max. When they got to 80% of their max, they know it didn't really matter if they concentrated on the movement or the muscle because it just got so heavy. So
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's there's train, it's like you're training your muscles, not your ego. So you have to really intentionally focus on what you're looking at. I think we talked earlier about mental movies. I think that's a beneficial way to potentially enhance your mind muscle contraction. The obvious one that people don't think about is how are you initiating the contraction. If you're starting a pec, if you're starting to cable fly, if I get my shoulders going like right here, so I'm hoping my pecs catch up, or do you want to like contract your pecs and finish the movement? So I think a lot of people that are really muscular, especially in the right spots, what they're training, they're going to intuitively do this. They don't even have to think about it because, if your pecs are huge and you're doing this, it's going to be pretty natural to want to use them to move the weight. But if they're not, you have to really focus on initiating that contraction. I think another way is posing, like bodybuilding posing. I couldn't believe it when I used to do that with Bryant, how much better my mind muscle connection got, because I think Mel Sif wrote about the super training, loadless lifting or something. Is that the term? Yeah. So there's definitely that too, of like, if you're posing, you're gonna get a better, I mean, if you can hit a lat spread properly in bodybuilding, I bet you when you do lat pull downs, you don't have your biceps take over, right? I just think you're gonna do it right because you have such good activation there already. So I think bodybuilding posing, I think accentuating the negative, when you're doing like a dumbbell bench press or something, really focusing on the contraction on the weight, is a good way, not necessarily like an eccentric overload that we talked about earlier, but just to get yourself to feel like those 5-second negatives and things like that can be a good way to tune your mind muscle connection, even though it's not necessarily an eccentric overload.
A couple things that I'll tell people is if that's why you're doing the movement, whatever the movement is, find the stretch and the muscle you're trying to train. If it's a chest supported row, you want the upper back or you want the lats, so elbows out, elbows in, find the stretch. Then when you find the stretch, before you start with zero momentum, start with like an isometric contraction and then pull, right? Because the chest fly that you were talking about, they start with that momentum. Yeah. I'm like, find the stretch in there. And if you really find the stretch, it kind of hurts. And if you're in that stretch position, kind of the last thing you want to do is flex hard. So when you're in that stretch position, isometrically contract and then no momentum and then build tension, then you can build speed if you want, after you get it going, then flex like a motherfucker. That's
a good point.
That, and you're going to use less weight. There's the other caveat, maybe that kind of goes like you were saying with over 80%, everything's going to work because it's become now a compound movement.
It has become a compound movement.
Right. So, we have seen push downs and flies and all this shit become compound movements. They're not.
Yeah. I mean, people, telling me they're doing flies with 120-pound dumbbells and they bench 365. I mean, come on, dude.
Like, it's a fun compound. You can see it.
It's a little more than a range of motion than normal bench press.
So as I was saying earlier, that kind of goes back to where's this fall in the training plan and what is the intention of doing it?
Yeah.
And then if that's the intention, then do it the best way the intention can allow, which means it's going to be less weight. Mm-hmm. Why do you fucking care? It's a fly. What you should care about, if it's a power lifter, what you care about is the bench press, right?
Not your pec deck PRs.
Yeah, or not your pec tearing.
Yeah.
Because you haven't done anything like that. But all those things are huge.
I think another one you're kind of touching the isometric part there is I think isometrically contracting the muscle before you do the movement. So if I'm going to hit chest flies, contract my chest as hard as I can for 6 seconds, then it go into the fly. I think you're gonna get better connection that way too.
Yes, exactly.
So what you're saying, you're kind of doing it while you're about to do the movement. I'm saying like that.
Oh, on both. I say on both
for sure.
Like hold both. Again, fatigue. This is where I think this is where I think people get fucked up with some programs. If there's programming for a movement like that fly, say it says 2 sets of 12.
Yeah.
They want to do 12. But if they're actually doing what we're saying and they're holding that stretch for a second, they're not using momentum, they're flexing hard, they may actually start to get closer to failure about 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And instead of just letting it die, they start cheating, which is kind of like kicking the can down the road. So if this effective rep thing is a thing, that would have been 6, 7, or 8. But because you kick the can down the road and you start heaving it, muscle fucking it, or whatever you're going to do, now it's going to be 12, 13, 14.
Right.
Right. Which is, it is an intensification principle if you wanted to use
if
that.
If you're using that for that purpose, it's great.
Yes.
Or you can do the opposite a lot of times. You get more out of it. You do like the partial reps and just kind of really focus on the squeeze or even the isometric, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're at failure and you just got the dumbbells up to here and just kind of squeeze your chest as hard as you can. You're definitely getting some beyond failure tension there.
Yeah. Sure. So see, that number it's a guideline.
Yeah.
Like when I came up, it was like 10 to 15 for shit like that, assuming that you were going to fail somewhere in between there. Then it became this exact number where a client now will see that 10 and they're going to do whatever they have to do to get 10.
Right.
Because that's the marker. The marker isn't, you know, failure or whatever that intention is.
Absolutely. So I think, what else we got here? So, I think we're, for the most part, through my notes here. Let me check right here. Yeah, I'd say the other thing is like kind of talking about mistakes of training would be, that was personally the biggest mistake I made training wise.
What's that?
Concentrating too much on numbers on useless exercises.
Me as well.
Yeah, I mean, like literally going through with no kind of injuries, and it's like just really like you hear about, okay, Kazmar did skull crushers with X amount.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna beat that or something, but it doesn't matter if he's benching more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, what Louis saying was true of, you can't have like a 500-pound, bench press with 300-pound back, but do you really have 600-pound triceps if your shoulders and your body momentum's using the weight up? I mean, you don't really, because you just kind of like, it was like, the extreme examples, like I remember that Jimmy the Bull dude used to do like, 160-pound hammer curls and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's definitely, if you don't get hurt, like, I mean, I'm sure the dude's functionally strong because he's lifting a lot of weight. It's just, it's high risk
with no reward. Yeah. Well, I guess for him, the reward was the publicity he was getting from it.
Yeah.
But for a lifter, there's no reward. It's just risk. There's a risk reward of every movement you do throughout the training. Like the first movements are going to have the higher risk.
Well,
right?
I think this all comes down to anyways, is what you just said, risk to reward, risk to benefit, however you want to phrase it, is that's training, and that's even life of like, if you take your life savings and buy a lottery ticket, that's a pretty damn high risk, right? Versus like putting it into a money market account or something. So there's everything's going to be a risk and reward. So how can we make that, in this equation, how can we minimize this risk but get the reward as high as possible? And I think that's what all this stuff kind of comes down to. And I think all the errors you're seeing with people, as I just mentioned, this was always erring to the side of risk versus, I mean, the reward would be, I guess of mine, the reward is pretty high because I do think some of the stuff definitely did help. It's just like it would have not caused any injuries too. I think there would have been another way to do it. The other mistake I made, I would talk about, is gaining weight too fast. Because the guy that started me powerlifting, Steve Hall, he used to drink like he would drink for a while. He was in a gallon of milk a day, but then he started getting to like 2 quarts of cream a day and Snickers bars to snack on, and then eat like normal meals. And he talked about like, he had me like convinced of like how lightweight powerlifting was like not even a thing. It was just like basically people that help pay for the venue kind of thing, and like, you know what I mean, like. And it was just like, it was just never like a serious thing. It was like, the meet early. No, that's when the light lifts.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I think I learned a ton from. I do think we could have done that better, is like not gaining weight so quick. Because I think it obviously helped a little bit, but I think I could have been a lot leaner because I started off fairly lean for, especially like in the 242s and stuff. Then it's just like eat as much as you can. So like it'd be like, I mean, I went for a while bulking up. I literally went to Waffle House, I think for like 15 months straight or something, like without missing a day or anything. It was something insane. Or like for a while, I remember like just eating like for breakfast every morning. The best weight gainers I did was just a big bowl of raviolis every morning, like in a bag of raviolis.
What was the heaviest you got?
I got up to like 315-ish.
But
But I felt for like, I feel better lighter, but I was saying for that kind of like weight, I felt actually pretty good in the low 290s. Like that wasn't like where 315 was like, I remember like hanging out the Mountaineer Cup and stuff, just walking around. It was like, I mean, not as bad as some people are there, but it was definitely like, I didn't feel like going on a 4-mile hike or something. For sure. And I think that, yeah, so I think I definitely made that mistake of gaining too much weight. I think the thing I did smart early on was I always bought into like, I didn't know the term off season, but I always did like higher reps and bodybuilding stuff because Ed Cohn had talked to me a lot about the kind of higher reps. It kind of got me to buy into that concept. And I think, you know, I took his advice and even took it further of like really doing a lot of the higher rep stuff, you know, and the higher volume stuff in the off season. I think what was extremely helpful to me.
Where's the best place for people to get a hold of you?
We got on my website, it's joshstrength.com. Instagram is Jailhouse Strong. I do Twitter now too. That's Josh Strength, and
Is it an X now?
Or X, whatever it is. Yeah. I have TikTok, but I don't really check that. I don't like that one as much. But those are the Twitter, my website, or Instagram's the main one I'm on. So any of those ones. Any
final thoughts that you have?
No, I really appreciate you having me on here. I'm looking forward to actually headed over to, it's funny, go to London, England next week to do a seminar.
Oh, wow.
Warwick, England.
Warwick, okay.
Another Elliot Page. Yeah. So, yep. So going over there and then getting ready to probably do it. I'm gonna do a couple other ones and then do that. Guy named Jordan Betts and I are looking to do some kind of tactical seminar down in Dallas area later this year too. So we're rocking and rolling, having fun. So
then we'll see you at Swiss as well.
I'm not gonna be there this year.
Oh, you're not there this year? Okay. Actually, that's right. So you're not gonna be there this year.
I'm going to do one in New York City because I
yeah, you had a prior commitment, I believe. Yes.
Next year, though.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I loved it.
Man, this has been a great time. It's awesome having you out. Thank you for everything that you've done for the industry, for Elite FTS and everything else.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
All right, guys, we're done.
Okay.
You guys are selecting Merrick for your telehealth platform needs. They have a couple different ways that they go about doing this. The first is through a self-selected experience. There's a table talk panel, which is the full panel. That would be the panel that I personally get twice a year. That's checking everything. You name it, it's all there. The other panel is a checkup panel with a guided optimization. You're connected with a patient care coordinator, and the patient care coordinator will meet with you to determine what your needs are. Thing to be able to help optimize your health or mitigate without judgment. So the discount code again is Table Talk Merrick Health for all your hormone optimization and performance needs. Hey guys, if you're a strength athlete, coach, trainer, or practitioner, the Swiss Symposium in Columbus, Ohio at the Easton Town Center, time's running out. It's October 21st, and we have a $200 discount running right now. As I said, seats are starting to fill. So head over to elitefts.com, register today. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drink 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/tabletalk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. no risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/table talk.